Agency's hands are tied.
UN peacekeepers in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, MONUSCO, say they intervened on Monday in Lopa Ituri province to protect civilians after heavily armed Codeco militia members entered the area.
Gunfire broke out near the peacekeepers' mobile base in the area as Codeco fighters arrived, seeking a confrontation with the peacekeepers. The violence quickly escalated, resulting in looting and destruction. Despite the violence, 6 civilians, including a priest, were safely evacuated. The UN peacekeeping mission continues to coordinate with Congolese national forces and local leaders to address the ongoing violence and to ensure the protection of civilians in the area.
South Africa's Umkhonto weSizwe political party has filed a motion of no confidence in President Cyril Ramaphosa, citing rising crime, economic mismanagement, and national security failures. The party is calling for a special parliamentary sitting within 2 weeks, insisting the move is aimed at restoring accountability, not driven by politics. MK Party Chief Whip in Parliament, Colleen Makhubele, has more.
We have now today put a motion of no confidence on the President for his failures, and chief among them, failure to fire Mtunu and to protect the most vulnerable in our society. We want our people to know that these GNU cosmetic changes of ministers, it does not mean reforms. This change does not mean improvement at all. It's a recycling of the same old. It's only a matter of time before another scandal hits because of this systematic rot. This systematic rot will keep churning out the same results of corruption.
UN peacekeepers in the Democratic Republic of Congo, MONUSCO, say they intervened on Monday in Lopa Ituri province. Now, we've done that story. Let's come to this one now. South Africa's ANC will host the Liberation Movement Summit this week in Gauteng province. President Cyril Ramaphosa, former President Thabo Mbeki, and former Mozambican President Joaquim Chissano will attend alongside leaders from MPLA, Frelimo, SWAPO, CCM, and ZANU-PF, this to strengthen regional cooperation and unity. First Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, Nomvula Mokonya, has more.
The summit taking place here of all the liberation movements is very important, strategic. The last time it took place was in 2002, not with all the presidents, but the secretaries general. This one is very exceptional. All the presidents are coming. Even the one who's not coming, she will be sending her own representative, but with a recorded message, the President of Tanzania. Over the weekend, the exercise would be about receiving reports. And amongst other things also that we need to deal with is to separate those that are doing wrong against those that are legitimate in any country, and they actually comply to the rules.
That's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. We'll be zooming into the West African region and get analysis there with our resident analyst in those stories. Stay with us.
9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the move with Palisa Tau and Benjamin Mushatam.
Should influencers be expected to be impactful in society? If there is a social or societal conversation that goes up, should we be waiting eagerly to hear what the influencers have to say?
They are more than just entertainers. They are thought leaders to some certain degree. They influence culture, they influence people's thought processes, they set trends, they shape opinions of people. And the sad reality is, although a lot of them don't want to accept it, I think we're getting better with them realizing that embarking in that journey and in that space comes with a certain level of responsibility.
I see it differently in that, professionals are already good at their job, but there is an optionality that they might have to use the position that they hold in society to be able to deliver a message. This year you made the example of actors and actresses. So the same could apply to a sportsman. Just because someone's good at soccer doesn't mean that they have to have an influence over society from a specific standpoint.
Keeping you on the know and on the move. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
From stories in general on the African continent to now zooming into the West African region of the continent, we look at those headlines. We speak to political analyst and conflict resolution expert, Dr. David Matsanga. Dr. Matsanga, it's always great having these catch-up sessions with you. How are you this Wednesday?
Very well, and I woke up ready for this exercise. I greet the entire Africa, good morning. And those who are still sleeping, wake up and work for Africa.
Yes, are you back? You were traveling last week. How were the travels?
Yes, travel was in the pursuit for peace, in the pursuit for changing. Nigeria is one of the biggest countries in Africa, but very shameful country. Human rights abuses.
Today, let's start with Togo.
Happened. So I was working on some enforcement orders that had been given by the courts of the United Nations on Nigeria and Cameroon.
And I'm sure we'll catch up on that story another time, Dr. Matsanga. It sounds very interesting. Let's start with Togo, though, today in our wrap. The ruling party there has won the municipal elections by over 75%. What was voter turnout like there, and what do you make of this big number, 75%?
It's self-won election. The opposition boycotted almost most of the stations. Opposition were not very much involved. So when the ruling party says it has won 75%, it won against itself. You know, Togo is one of the areas where there is anything that will be something that is going to happen, just as I predicted in so many places in Africa. If you look at the way things are going in Togo, I think it looks like it is one of the candidates for a very serious change. The leader changed the constitution, empowered himself with another extra 7 years, and then muzzled the opposition. People have been protesting, people have been locked up. It is all the same game of Africa as it is. Take power, strengthen your position, win an election against yourself.
So as far as these municipal election results are concerned, they're not final. Political parties still have about 5 days to contest them. Do you see any contestation to them?
But it is useless to contest any elections in Togo because the system is just a system by the Togolese president. So how are you going to contest something that you know you will fail, you will come out? This is one of the problems, of the trigger problems in Africa. I think Africa should start changing what type of model of democracy they want. Do they want elective democracy where you go one man, one vote, or we need consensus democracy? That's the debate, because elections in Africa are triggering a conflict.
So the UK, let's move on to there now. They've announced new measures to simplify imports from African countries to make it easier for UK-Africa trade. Are there specific target countries and sectors under this new measure?
There are several countries, but you know some of the beneficiaries of this trade will be the Commonwealth countries, especially my country, Uganda, where I was born over 60 years ago. It is going to benefit. In fact, in London, I eat the food like I eat in Uganda. There is nothing. The only thing I miss is the weather. But the markets are full of commodities from Uganda, from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Kenya, from Tanzania, from South Africa. The Commonwealth is actually benefiting quite a lot out of this new trade. So Britain, as you could note from all the analysis of international relations, you can see that Britain is quietly doing a very good diplomacy. Stammer is doing a quiet diplomacy as opposed to the rooftop diplomacy of Mr. Trump. Therefore, we are coming back, of course, as a civilized nation, which does not behave like Mr. Trump, is trying to bring back the market, the African market, which is plenty, by removing some of the barriers that had prohibited Africa from trading as equal partners.
So as you speak of that, can this be seen as an opportunistic move given the US's tariff schemes and measures, whether it's good or not?
I think this is a good move for the British economy, for the British citizens, for the British businesses. It's not opportunistic. In fact, the one that is opportunistic is in the Atlantic Ocean across of America. They tell you, come, give us South Africa, give us minerals. And if you don't give us minerals, we shall say there are white farmers being killed there every day, 1,000 of them. That is not the policy. Britain is doing things in a systematic, it's not opportunistic, it is grabbing the chance where America has lost glory.
So these amendments to the UK's developing countries trading scheme, what do they remove? What do they add to those previous requirements?
They remove trading. You know, when you are importing goods from Africa, there are certain standards that were set. For example, most of our goods are organic, especially, let me speak on my behalf, on behalf of my Ugandan products. We grow organic goods, organic mangoes, organic oranges, organic okra, organic cabbages, organic, all these bananas. We have good organic food that goes into the British market, which is needed by the British citizens and other people who need them in Europe. But there were limitations, there were specific directions that the European Union put there. Before you can enter their market, you must grow the food in this way, you must use that type of fertilizers. You know, some of them were not working at all. So these are some of the smaller things. Second, the taxation. They have waived some taxation. For example, some of the Uganda products arrive in UK with less or nothing like a taxation. And there are a few countries that have been given exemptions.
Let's move to Niger now, Doctor. A precious rock from Mars that was found in Niger has sold for $5.3 million at an auction in New York. How was it discovered and how did it end up in the US?
That is exactly how did it end up in the US. You note that the United States of America is hovering around the Sahara region. First, the French bring a war, make that war place impossible by anyone. Then all of a sudden, there is a big stone that has actually run 140 miles, a million miles from Mars and landed there. But from nowhere, you find people have gone to pick the stone, but people don't want to remove insurgency, ISIS. Why is it that they are more interested in removing the stone when in Niger, in the area where the stone fell, there was insurgency, but they don't want to remove it? Now, they come for the stone, pick it up, and how it ended up, they took it. They even tell us that this is a very bad stone. You see, some of these characters have colonial mentality of David Livingstone, who arrived in 1843 somewhere there where you are now, and arrived on this continent, created as this, while you pray, land is being taken. While you are there fighting insurgency, your stone is being taken, which is valued at $5.4 million. Surely, I think time has come. All is the blame is African Union. We have not put our house together, and we are going to write books of lamentation.
Scientists are reportedly in outrage over the sale of this precious rock. I'm not sure if it's Niger scientists or scientists from the US or the world around. What are they complaining? What are they saying should have been done with this rock instead?
It should have been returned to Niger itself for them to decide on what they want to do. They could have kept the rock for people to go and visit to see what life is on Mars. You and I would even fly to Niger, Niamey, and go to the museum and watch. How much money would that bring? Plenty. Then you have taken it to the New York and sold it. It's not yours. But you said they were insurgents, ISIS, Al Qaeda, Nini Maghreb, that area, Sahel region. Don't go there. And they put, travel advisory that don't go to Niger. But you find these Americans busy down there in Niger, in the villages. How do they survive these insurgents?
So,
that's
Dr.
another topic for another day.
Dr. Matsanga, does this rock form part of Niger's cultural heritage, however? It's from Mars. Does it not belong to the whole world? What is the likelihood of it being returned to Niger?
Well, let's see if why is gold in South Africa and not in America? It is yours. Whatever falls in your country remains in your territorial international boundaries are recognized. Niger is a state recognized by UN, my sister. So therefore, if this stone fell in Niger, why didn't it fall in New York? God chose it to fall in Niger. Give them their stone. Why do you sell it without their permission?
Let's move over to Mali now. The armed forces there, in partnership with Russian-backed Wagner Group fighters, have committed executions of Fulani men since January this year. These accusations are coming from Human Rights Watch. How can we confirm and why are they coming out now? Because this was since Jan.
Let me tell you, Human Rights Watch is an American NGO, an outfit of CIA. Of course, I speak my mind. They do these things as an output, an outfit linked to a CIA system. So what can they report about Russia? Whenever they smell Russia somewhere, they will say, look, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, especially Mali, has been fighting insurgents of Boko Haram, ISIS, the Al Qaeda in the Maghreb. That has been there for years, planted by the French. The French enjoy this area to be in chaos so that they take more minerals, more uranium, more gold, more everything that is in that Sahara Desert. Now, my friend Captain Gota, the general, the man in charge in Niger, decided after he had overthrown the government of the elected government, he said, let's fight insurgents, wipe this out. Because truly speaking, they have made a lot of scores against the insurgents. They have weakened the Al Qaeda, ISIS groups that were remnants, cells that are there, which will open up the route towards Libya and the Mediterranean Sea. So when you see that being done, Human Rights Watch comes in, CIA tactics comes in, we must investigate. Why didn't you investigate? Why are you not investigating the human rights abuses in Nigeria? Why are you not investigating human rights abuses in Cameroon, southern Cameroon, where millions are being killed, slaughtered, starved, women who have never seen even life, children who have never gone to school? Some of these agencies must be told, get out of Africa. Get out. If we had a stronger AU, headed by powerful Pan-African bodies, politically minded, well-educated, streamlined, not ambassadors who have just gone to Addis Ababa to occupy this place and earn dollars when they don't know, they don't even have documents. They have not documented how many people have died in Africa in those areas. It is a sad story. Gota is doing the right thing. Whether he's doing it with the Russian Wagner Group, that is okay, as long as he gets rid of the insurgents that is in his area.
Finally, Dr. Matsanga, in about 30 seconds, because that's all we have, Senegal's president dissolving the National Assembly. Why did he do that, President Bassirou Diomaye?
This is a younger man who has annoyed me. I'm upset, but as an elder, I'm not upset because I'm one of the few people who struggled for them to have freedom out of Macky Sall. The two of them have started fighting, Sonko and Faye. And I'm going to fly into Dakar in the next coming week. I will be in Dakar. I want to see that they have that unity because I played a pivotal role for their release. no African leader was talking about them being released from jail. It was Matsanga. So I don't see why he is doing this. This guy has let me down. He has now gone into the French pockets. He's doing what the French want. Again, instead of sticking to the original agreement of Sonko, he's doing the opposite. The opposition is up in arms. In fact, they might lose power as a result of the bad management of Faye and his group, as a result of the infighting, the bitter. Africa needs this thing called a redemption strategy, Asanda. The one that you people did in South Africa. If most African countries don't do the redemption strategy, please, African leaders, listen to me. In Uganda, we were killing each other. Today, as we speak, that war ended. We did a redemption strategy. I was at the top of it, introducing this redemption strategy as a conflict resolution expert. Please come and do a redemption. Stop fighting. Stop wars. Stop within governments.
Yes.
Yourselves fighting
Dr.
each other.
Matsanga, we're going to have to leave it there for today. That's all the time we have. But thanking you again for your time. We always appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much, Asanda, and I also appreciate your voice all the time. And keep it going. Africa must rise and shine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is political analyst and conflict resolution expert, Dr. David Matsanga. 31 minutes past 6 Central African time. Let's get our news headlines. Here's Jwalani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines. Mozambique's main opposition leader, Venancio Mondlane, has been charged with 5 offences, including inciting and instigating terrorism. After last year's disputed elections, Mondlane led months of protests that were violently suppressed by the police. The ruling Botswana National Front, or BNF, is on a mission to foster unity with neighbouring countries. Both South Africa's Economic Freedom Fighters and the African National Congress parties were invited to attend the party's first conference in Palapye at the weekend. And finally, the former US President Barack Obama has hit back at President Donald Trump for accusing his director of national intelligence of a treasonous conspiracy. This is in relation to the 2016 election. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's check in now with the world of sports. Here's Fikile Lingwati with our update. I'm sure we'll be talking WAFCON. Nigeria and South Africa, I know, were playing last night. What do you have for us, Fikile? Good morning.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Asanda. Yes, we begin with a football story in Morocco. South Africa has been dethroned as Women's Africa Cup of Nations champions. 9-time champions Nigeria broke Banyana's hearts with a goal on 90 minutes for a 2-1 semi-final victory in Casablanca, Morocco. The Super Falcons scored via a penalty by their captain Rashidat Ajibade on the stroke of half-time to take a slender lead into the break. A penalty by Linda Mutalo just before the hour mark drew Banyana level, but a lapse in concentration cost South Africa at the death when Michelle Alzi capitalized on a defensive error to score the winning goal for Nigeria. It was the Super Falcons' 9th victory in 12 WAFCON matches over Banyana, and they are on course for a record 10th title. South Africa, on the other hand, have been relegated to the playoff match for the bronze medal on Friday. Now, cricket news. Cricket South Africa, CSA's new selection convener, Patrick Moroni, has made it clear that his tenure will not be based on racial politics. Moroni starts his new job on the 1st of August and will have a tough time navigating that topic with a senior national team that's failed to reach its own transformation targets in the recent past. Just last year, the T20 squad was heavily criticized for taking only one black African player, Kagiso Rabada, to the World Cup in the USA and West Indies, albeit having reached the final there. He says the goal is to move away from race policies in terms of selection.
Ultimately, I would like to think that in time that goes by, that we will not have to talk about race and balance and team selection in the same sentence. but it is something that we have, that we're working with. Ultimately, we try and select the best possible players, the best 11, the best squads to be on the field.
The difference is that particular era of the Proteas was that there was no selection panel, with the white ball coach Rob Walter picking his own team. Moroni says his relationship with coach Shukri Conrad goes back a long way and doesn't see any issues in them working together.
Premier Shuks and I have had a chat, very short and brief. He's currently busy with the Zimbabwean series, but we've always also had the pleasure of working together before. We've known each other for a very long time. So there's no doubt that there'll be mutual respect for each other's spaces. And yeah, he hasn't been used to having a selector at Protea level, but prior to that, at Asanda 19, we worked well together.
And lastly, South African swimmer Peter Kutse says to finish the FISU World University Games with a trio of medals around his neck is a memory that will live on forever. Speaking after his final individual event, the Olympian reflected on being the first athlete to get Team South Africa on the podium.
Super happy to get the win. It was very close and pretty fortunate to get the touch in the end. But yeah, just happy to finish off with a win and excited to see what Team SA does for the rest of the competition. I didn't have any expectations coming into this meet. The competition was very strong. I think it was stronger than I expected, but yeah, to get 3 medals in my 3 races is awesome.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Dingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. This Mandela Month, we honor his belief that education is the most powerful weapon to change the world.
Education is one of the most important weapons in a country.
Catch us on DSTV Bouquet 802. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's check in now with the world of business, getting our economics news now from Nosipo Zuma. Good morning.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. In your business news this hour, a court in Mali has rejected an appeal by Barrick Mining to release 4 employees arrested last November. Now, this is the latest development in a long-running standoff between the Canadian firm and the Mali government over taxes and ownership of mining operations in the country. Bundle Headbush reports.
The appeal by Barrick Mining, which has dismissed the allegations against the 4 local employees as baseless, was determined by Judge Samba Sarr to be unfounded. The company says its employees face charges including money laundering and violation of other regulations. Barrick owns 80% of the Lulukunkoto mining complex in Mali, and the government owns the rest. Operations have been suspended there since mid-January.
South African beef producer Karen Beef says it lost millions of dollars over the past 2 months after the foot and mouth disease was detected in its facilities in May. Karen Beef makes at least 30% of the country's beef. The outbreak of foot and mouth disease in the country has led to an increase in beef prices, job cuts, and a decrease in exports. Speaking on the sidelines of the foot and mouth disease endemic currently underway in Roodeplaat, Pretoria, senior veterinarian at Karen Beef, Dirk Verwoerd, said although they have started operations again, the past months have not been easy on their business.
So our entire operation was stuck for 2 months, 0 income, and that's really a destroying situation. The company itself lost several hundred millions of rands. The big gap in the control measures against foot and mouth disease has been the lack of vaccine. Enough vaccines, effective vaccines, regular vaccination in the source area so it doesn't escape, which it did. You have to have strategic vaccines, you have to have enough of them.
Meanwhile, South African Commercial Farmers Organisation Agri-Western Cape has expressed concern over the announcement of a 30% US tariff on South African exports set to take effect next month. Now, this after US President Donald Trump announced that goods from South Africa will be subject to a 30% tariff from the 1st of August. Agri-Western Cape CEO Yanni Stradom says this will have a severe impact on the agricultural sector in the province. The announcement has sent shockwaves through the local wine industry, valued at over 650 million rand annually. Stradom has appealed to the government, especially the Agriculture Department, to assist in establishing new markets.
We've recently seen the results from Stats SA in terms of employment opportunities in the Western Cape, that the Western Cape agricultural sector contributes 25.5% of the agricultural workforce in the country. In terms of permanent labour, we employ around about 220,000 people, and you can double it with seasonal workers. We are a huge employer in the agricultural sector.
The latest money stress tracker by South African debt management company Debt Busters has once again revealed that women continue to bear the brunt of financial anxiety. According to Debt Busters, almost 3 out of 4 female respondents reported suffering from financial stress. The fourth annual survey polled over 27,000 respondents during May and June this year. Executive head for Debt Busters, Bene Sega, says that every year women have shown higher levels of financial anxiety compared with men.
And I think that has a lot to do with the role that women, the pivotal role that women play in our society, but also the fact that they take on the burden for an entire household often as primary caregivers, professionals earning the money, looking after everyone in the household, as mothers, as sisters, as daughters. It's a lot to take on, worrying about a lot of people.
And finally, a Japanese power company says it will conduct a geological survey in preparation for a new nuclear reactor. The decision marks Japan's first concrete step towards building a new nuclear reactor since the Great East Japan earthquake in 2011, which triggered a meltdown at its Fukushima power plant, leading it to be shut down. The BBC's Mickey Bristow has more.
The earthquake caused a tsunami that led to a meltdown at the Fukushima nuclear facility, turning Japan off atomic power. But the government has now realised it will have to go back to nuclear to meet the growing demand for energy and its climate change commitments. Kansai Electric Power wants to construct a reactor at the Mihama facility and will begin surveying the proposed site. It says it wants to build a reactor that's more resilient to natural disasters, but knows it will have to persuade a sceptical public.
Your financial indicators: $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,530 naira. In Botswana is 13 pula 30. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 71, and in Zambia it's 23 kwacha 08. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 579. Russia is 78 rubles 44. India it's 86 rupees 14. China at 7 yuan 17, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 67. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,387 and platinum at $1,458 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $68.70 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipo Suma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Our G20 fact this morning is the G20, originally a collection of 20 of the world's largest economies, was conceived as a bloc that would bring together the most important industrialized and developing economies to discuss international economic and financial stability. Its annual summit, a gathering of G20 leaders that debuted in 2008, has evolved into a major forum for discussing economics as well as other pressing global issues. And that's our G20 fact for this morning, the 23rd of July.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
6:45 Central African time it is. Good morning to you if you've just joined us. Now, access to funding remains one of the biggest obstacles faced by startups and small businesses in emerging economies. On day 2 of the Startup 20 midterm engagement in Johannesburg, this issue took center stage during a panel discussion featuring local and global voices. Our reporter Lebogang Mabange has more.
At the Beachwood Hotel and OR Tambo Conference Center in the city of Captain Park in South Africa, entrepreneurs, venture capitalists and policymakers gathered to unpack the enduring problem of access to capital, a challenge that continues to constrain the growth of early-stage startups in South Africa and beyond. Nick Allen, managing partner at Seven Venture Fund, said South Africa's venture capital ecosystem is still underfunded and lacks support from key institutional investors.
Our venture capital space is very much what we call nascent. You know, it's very much on in the early stages, and it's still very much underfunded. You know, we're sitting on the sidelines waiting to see how well VC can do before we decide whether or not to put money into it. It's risky for the country. It's risky for countries like South Africa, in that we desperately need venture capital in order to allow our economies to grow the way high-performing economies around the world do grow.
Entrepreneurs on the ground say the system is often too slow to respond to their needs. Selebogo Molefe, founder of the Bees Plug and co-creator of the People's Fund, highlighted how innovative crowdfunding models are being held back by outdated regulation.
The system is just too slow. It's not proactive, it's reactive, even in the policy making. I mean, I'll give you an example. With us at the People's Fund, we were put into a sandbox together with other financial companies like the banks. Standard Bank was one of the companies in that sandbox. And it was because the crowdfunding space is not regulated in South Africa. They wanted to find a way to regulate us because we're growing really fast, collecting the money, and collecting it from everyday common people. But it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to unlock capital from the masses and do something productive with it. And we proved it.
The Startup Act movement is working to change that. Its aim is to create legislation that supports high-growth startups through better tax incentives and policy reforms. Punzile Chifunyise says the Startup Act could be key in unlocking early-stage funding.
This policy instrument can be one of our solutions to get capital, especially for high-risk businesses to be funded. We are looking particularly to high growth enabled tech focused and really disruptive businesses to be legislated through this policy instrument that's going to make their environment easier and to work, right? So if we're looking at reforms such as incentivizing VCs.
Dr. Vasiliki Mafruedi from the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, reminded delegates that funding challenges are often part of a larger policy puzzle, one that includes innovation ecosystems, regulatory frameworks, and investor confidence.
What would be the improvements that they could make in policy, increasing financing, but also complementing this with business services that is equally important, changing their mindset, increasing demand for the services, and also the regulatory framework. It's important for the investor to have a level of confidence that there will be success after, so we're talking about what are the exit opportunities, what is the market opportunity, is there going to be talent, so is there science and technology innovation happening? So in that sense, there's a lot of different elements and a very big puzzle for the policymaker to solve, and it's not easy.
Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting 13 July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus, anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's logistics entity Transnet has been dealt a blow after being downgraded by ratings agency S&P Global Ratings from BB- to B positive. This effectively means the company is vulnerable and may not be able to service its debt. The ratings agency says Transnet is entirely dependent on the state to stay afloat. Meanwhile, Transnet has been criticized for resisting reforms and years of failed leadership. Dimakadzo Lishoro has the details.
With bailouts including credit guarantee facilities of above $5 billion over the last 5 years, Transnet seems to be sinking even further. The latest assessment from S&P Global Ratings found the entity is wholly dependent on state support to be able to service its debt because of its sizable negative cash flow. It is burning through $761 million annually, and it has high fixed costs as well as major capital expenditure requirements, which it cannot sustain without a bailout. Busisiwe Mavuso, head of Business Leadership South Africa, says the downgrade from BB- to B positive is not only a reflection of Transnet's financial distress, but also a damning indictment of years of failed leadership, union militancy, and a government that continues to bail out state-owned enterprises without demanding fundamental reforms.
The decision by Standard & Poor to downgrade Transnet credit rating was very disappointing for us as the business community, precisely because there is a lot of time, energy, effort, and work that has been put in to try and ensure that the utility actually turns the corner. As much as there's recently been slow progress in terms of implementing some of the deliverables that are necessary to improve the operational performance of Transnet, we were hoping that we wouldn't see the credit rating agency downgrading Transnet. It really is a step back in terms of where the utility finds itself. This makes it difficult for them to raise funding for the much needed work that they need to do. It makes it difficult for them to eventually get themselves out of this financial rut that they find themselves in. But when you look at why they were downgraded, it actually makes sense, because then S&P is actually saying that we are worried that Transnet continues to burn cash without the prospect of turning around its operational performance. They are saying we are worried that Transnet might not be in a position to actually reach its targeted 250 million tons by 2030 as they had actually articulated and as they had actually set out.
Despite this, the company has offered its workforce a higher than inflation wage increase, leaving analysts baffled given its weakened financial position.
Transnet agreed to get into an arrangement with the unions where their employees are going to be getting 6% increases for the next 3 years. And it therefore doesn't make sense to say, if you are an entity that finds itself in this position, on what basis do you agree on a 6% increase when inflation is currently 2.8? On what basis do you agree that you are not going to be retrenching any workers for the next 3 years when you don't know how the current cycle and lack of operational performance is actually going to affect your business, as it were? I think we're just going to have to intensify our efforts in terms of ensuring that the logistics crisis that we have in this country is actually improved. We are already doing a lot of work as business in terms of ensuring that through the National Logistics Crisis Committee, there is some progress. We are obviously trying to accelerate, the private sector participation that is currently underway.
In his weekly newsletter, President Cyril Ramaphosa says 98 requests by private train operators have been received thus far, but there has been no formal allocation. This is part of government's plan to include the private sector in Transnet's operation to help ease the burden on the state and introduce reforms. Ramaphosa says a revised network statement will be published soon and capacity allocated in response to the requests. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakazo Leshoro in Johannesburg.
In the wake of South Africa's ongoing foot and mouth disease outbreak, farmers across the country are bearing the brunt of its devastating impact. In an interview with Channel Africa at the National Foot and Mouth Disease Indaba in the capital, Pretoria, Member of Parliament and Portfolio Committee Member on Agriculture, Willie Oukamp, emphasized the urgency of restoring the country's vaccine production capabilities. Oukamp commended Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen and South Africa's Department of Agriculture for their swift response to the crisis, but warned that years of neglect, particularly at vaccine manufacturing facilities, have left South Africa dangerously reliant on imported vaccines. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe spoke with Member of Parliament and Portfolio Committee Member on Agriculture, Willie Oukamp.
All farmers are hugely affected by this foot and mouth disease outbreak. We therefore want to thank Minister Steenhuisen as well as the department for hosting this indaba. I think it's good that we speak with each other. We need to get to solutions now. It is unfortunate that South Africa is now at a place that we have got to import vaccines for foot and mouth disease from our neighboring country, Botswana, where in the past we had a state-of-the-art, world-class foot and mouth disease vaccine producing facility. That was neglected over many years. It wasn't maintained properly. Due to cadre deployment, people were employed in positions that they did not know how to execute. And now we are sitting in a situation where the Agricultural Research Council is not manufacturing foot and mouth disease vaccines anymore. And on the other side, we've got the OBP, Onderspoort Biological Products, that has also had a lot of trouble with vaccine manufacturing, African horse sickness vaccine, lumpy vaccine. So we need to get those facilities up and running again so that we are self-sufficient when it comes to vaccine manufacturing. I know that the Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, have asked the Minister of Finance for funding so that we can get money allocated towards our department to put into the re-establishment of these vaccine facilities so that we can really be standing on our own 2 feet there.
How viral has this disease spread across the regions of South Africa?
Well, we saw the first outbreaks in the Eastern Cape. We know about the outbreaks in KZN and some outbreaks in Gauteng and the Northwest. The immediate thing that was done was to have corridors of safety be built around those areas. We saw that vaccines have been imported at an immense rate, 900,000 vaccines that came in and that has been distributed. I spoke to farmers here this morning that said that where they had outbreaks, they could immediately get vaccines same day. So it is clear that the department under the leadership of Minister Steenhuisen is making earnest of this. They are really taking this serious and they are trying to do whatever they can to get to the solutions. We need to listen to the farmers. They've got a lot of knowledge on this. We need to make sure that tracking and tracing of animals are now going to be implemented, because that is one way that we can really curb the spread of diseases, not only foot and mouth disease, but other diseases as well.
Talking about the impact, where have people been affected the most? Is it at the production level, the price increases? Where are we today?
Well, firstly, when you've got foot and mouth disease, you are battling to export your meat. So it will create an overstock for the local market, which might have an effect on prices. It will have an effect on farmers. They can't get money, proper money for their animals. If they can't get money, they will have to have people dismissed because of the fact that they can't afford them anymore. So the whole value chain is affected. The export markets, the farmer, farm workers, the value chain, the truck driver that's driving it to the abattoirs are affected, the butcheries are affected. So it is a real huge impact across the board, across all sectors of the value chain. And that is why we need to address this as soon as possible and get these vaccine manufacturing facilities in South Africa up and running so that we are not reliant on other countries, but that we can go out there and do that ourselves. Our farmers are the best farmers in the world. They know what to do. We, from a point of government, must give them all the support that we can give them from.
That was Minister of Parliament and Portfolio Committee Member on Agriculture, Willie Okamp, speaking with Michael Mbewe. Well, we enter the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine now. It's 7 o'clock Central African time. Thank you for joining us and staying with Channel Africa. At Channel Africa 1 is our handle across our various social media platforms. We are streaming live on YouTube, and also www.channelafrica.co.za is where you can find us. My name is Asanda Beda. In this hour, we look at Nigeria's gross domestic product having grown by 3.13% year on year. Also going to Cameroon, where there's a presidential race that's being launched today, and we'll be speaking to a political analyst there. But that story and more coming up in terms of the 80 presidential hopefuls that have submitted their candidates to Cameroon's electoral body. Let's find out what's happening in the world of news here first, though. Here's Jolani Tulongwepe, and then Fikile Lingwate will follow with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Mozambique's main opposition leader, Venancio Mondlane, has been charged with 5 offences, including inciting and instigating terrorism. After last year's disputed elections, Mondlane led months of protests that were violently suppressed by the police. Tabiso Lehoko has the story.
Venancio Mondlane says he learned of the charges during a meeting with Mozambique's Attorney General. The opposition leader said that this was a sign of the persecution he's faced for exposing fraud in last year's elections. Earlier this year, Mr. Mondlane held what appeared to be reconciliation meetings with President Daniel Chapo. The aim was to end the protests, which saw hundreds of people killed and steer Mozambique out of a deep crisis. Bringing terrorism charges against the opposition leader could reignite political instability.
South Africa's Umkhonto weSizwe Party has written to National Assembly Speaker Thoko Didiza, calling for her to schedule a date for the party's motion of no confidence in President Cyril Ramaphosa. During a press briefing in Parliament, MKP Chief Whip Colleen Makubele and party colleagues outlined their reasons for going this route.
Given the issues that the President, from the beginning of the 6th term right through to the 7th term, has been facing allegations of interference, failure of accountability, including his own palapala. Now we've got allegations of corruptions that are linked to him, and we've got failures in his administration to provide even the basic services to our people. The citizens have lost confidence in the President.
The ruling Botswana National Front, or BNF, is on a mission to foster unity with neighbouring countries. Both South Africa's economic freedom fighters and the African National Congress parties were invited to attend the party's first conference in Palapye at the weekend. The BNF came to power after the 2024 elections, ousting the Botswana Democratic Party that had governed the country for more than 5 decades. President Duma Boko says he is a human rights activist and that he's always aspired for a united Africa.
Economic freedom fighters, the African National Congress, all of them must step up in order to step back and reflect on the existential threat that faces their country and the rest of the region, and indeed the continent. And when they do, I hope they rise above and beyond some of these differences.
Political activists in Kenya say the young demonstrators who have frequently taken to the streets in recent months to protest a myriad of issues, including police brutality, are just being used to send a warning to opposition parties in the country. This after terrorism-related charges against renowned Kenyan activist Boniface Mwangi have been dropped. However, Mwangi will now face prosecution for possession of ammunition without a valid firearm certificate. Mwangi was dramatically arrested on Saturday at his home and was initially accused by the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, DCI, of facilitating terrorist activities linked to the 25th of June protests. The arrest triggered widespread public attention, with authorities claiming to have recovered items that raised national security concerns. A member of Kenyan's parliament, Maxwell Kariuki.
The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions dropped the terrorism charges because of the outcry. Everybody was up in arms. The people can see what the government is up to. And after so much noise, they decided to reduce the charges. Now, there is a group of protesters that were arrested after the July 7th protest. Majority of them are young people, what we call the Gen Zs. Now, those boys and girls, literally kids on that one, and I don't think they will find something, but I think it's a tactic to try and intimidate Kenyans whenever they want to rise and criticize the government.
The former U.S. President Barack Obama has hit back at President Donald Trump for accusing his Director of National Intelligence of a treasonous conspiracy. This is in relation to the 2016 election. Obama's spokesperson has released a statement calling the allegations outrageous, ridiculous, and a weak attempt at distraction. Sharon Bryce-Pease reports.
Obama's spokesperson Patrick Rondenbush said that out of respect for the office of the presidency, their office did not normally dignify, quote, the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of the White House, describing it further as outrageous enough to merit this response. He said nothing in the documents released by DNI Tulsi Gabbard last week undercut the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 presidential election but did not successfully manipulate votes. Rondenbush said those findings were affirmed by the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee led by then-Chairman Marco Rubio, President Trump's Secretary of State.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Proteas slipped to their second defeat against New Zealand in the T20 Tri-Series in Harare. And former Banyana Banyana midfielder Pinky Machekane is disappointed with the Banyana Banyana's loss in the WAFCON semi-final. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Over 80 presidential hopefuls have submitted their candidacies to Cameroon's electoral body, ELECAM, ahead of the October 12 elections. 92-year-old President Paul Biya is seeking another term after more than 40 years in power. Civil society groups are urging the opposition to unite behind one candidate. From Yaoundé, Moki Kinzeka reports growing calls to amend the electoral code, which allows almost anyone to run for president.
Cameroon's elections management body ELECAM says a record 82 candidates, up from less than 30 who deposited candidacy files in the 2018 presidential elections, include 8 women. The most popular among them, Patricia Ndamjoya of the CDU party. Ndamjoya says she thinks she is fit to beat Biya, whom she says has ruined Cameroon since he took over power from former President Amadou Ahidjo in 1982.
For the Democratic Union, the best government is the one that creates and maintains the best conditions for social political change and democratic change. The development of each person's personalities, the responsible participation of all the management of the countries, and the creation of the wealth. This is the government that the Cameroon Democratic Union will put in place.
But a majority of the 81 aspirants are unknown in Cameroon's political history. They have never contested in any local elections. One of the aspirants, Kisop Bertin, is serving an ongoing prison sentence. Many Cameroonians, like Muel Hilary, a member of Cameroon Civil Society Group, said a huge number of candidates indicates the electoral code, which makes it possible for every Tom, Dick, and Harry to submit candidacy papers, should be revised to give the race the honor it ought to deserve.
Suddenly, somebody who is a farmer in the village, not even popular in his own hamlet, pops up one morning and says he is tabling his candidacy for the 2025 election. And you see another person, one miserable teacher somewhere, will just get up and say, I am tabling my candidacy. I don't just understand Cameroonians. Are they just trying to show off? Or they want to benefit from the subvention or money that is given to those campaigning? We should be talking about the main opposition parties coming together to form a coalition so that they can easily beat the ruling party that has been in power for almost half a century. Not me getting up and saying, I've created my own, I'm tabling my candidacy, another person doing the same thing. I see it's more or less comedy.
Elekam also reports that 8 political parties, including the ruling CBDM party of President Paul Biya, have 2 candidates each. Elekam will have to decide which of the candidates is legitimate, but during the 2018 elections, the UPC submitted 2 candidates and all of them were disqualified. Cameroonians are asking if history will repeat itself or if Elekam will have the courage to reject Biya's file. There are, however, serious candidates to face Biya, like Maurice Kamto, who claims he won in 2018 and that his victory was stolen by Biya. Akere Muna of the Universe Party, Joshua Osi of the SDF, Cabral Libi of the PCRN, Bello Buba Maigari of the NUDP, and Issa Chiruma Bakari of the FSNC are also said to be very popular. Political analyst Anchang Paul says if the opposition continues to be fragmented, Biya will win again and extend his over 4-decade rule.
The presidential elections in Cameroon this year are quite particular because we have an incumbent who has 42 years of experience at the helm of the state. We have probably, say, some political figures who equally have political experience, such as Bello Buba Maigari from the UNDP political party. He had an alliance with the CPGM political party, Issa Chiroma as well. But it's left up to Elekam to be able to determine the candidacies of those who deposit their candidacies for presidency. Of course, it looks favorable that the incumbent will be the winner due to the experience, but we're also seeing the challengers who are moving up in steam to see whether or not they will be equally be able to face the challenge and be able to let us know who will be the winner of this presidential election.
Cameroonians are now focused on opposition leaders who, after depositing their candidacy files, still promise to meet and decide on a single candidate, an indication that many opposition leaders may still withdraw their candidacy papers before the October 12th election. Reporting for Channel Africa, this is Moki Kinzaka in Yaoundé, Cameroon.
So let's discuss this further as we're joined now by political analyst Achang Paul in Cameroon. Achang, thank you for joining us. How are you this Wednesday?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on Channel Africa on your radio. I'm doing very well.
Great. What do you make of this unprecedented number of candidates seeking to challenge President Paul Biya?
Well, for me as a political analyst and on the scene, it shows the vitality really and the plurality of the Cameroonian democratic system. Mind you, there was a return to multi-party politics in Cameroon only in 1990. So we have seen a gradual rise in the plurality of the process. The vitality here comes in the sense that many aspirants feel comfortable enough to be able to trust the autonomous body that organizes the elections. Now, the bone of contention here being the electoral code, because many political parties, including the regime political party, have a contention with the electoral code. Now, the organizing body, which is Elections Cameroon, that organizes the election, now just follows strictly the electoral code. So, in my opinion, It shows the vitality of it. It also gives credibility to the organizing body. But now it's left to be able to confirm with the electoral code by the Electoral Commission if this political candidate, because there are two vehicles. You can be an independent candidate. You would require 300 signatures. There are 10 regions in Cameroon. You need 30 signatures from each municipal councillor, or you are invested by a political party, and you have to be in conformity with the electoral code for your candidacy to be invested or to be retained by Elections Cameroon, which is the organizing body of elections in Cameroon.
President Biya has been around a very long time. How do you see his role in this election, especially after he reshuffled the country's military leadership?
Well, his role has always been that he has a lot of experience on the field, and many Cameroons have only known him. A certain generation of Cameroons since 1982 have only known President Paul Biya as the President of the Republic. So when it comes to experience, he has a plethora of experience. Now, this change in the military leadership, to me, it's not necessarily a major change. It's just a change in maybe a generational change where you have some younger military leaders who are replacing some older military leaders, which means there's also a vitality there. But we would also see that with the opposition political parties, there are also older candidates, just like Bello Maigai of the UNDP political party, who also has a lot of experience. He was the vice prime minister. He has been there with Aijo. He has also been there with Paul Biya. We're also seeing a classical political parties which have been there. But more what we're seeing also is young, aspiring political parties that are willing to be able to take up to the task to challenge the ruling CPDM party and also challenge the classical opposition parties. That leaves the question being that can coalitions or alliances in politics in Cameroon really coexist, because there's a problem of trust, and there's more of a problem also where most political parties do not necessarily transpire their vision, their economic, social plans, and Cameroonians themselves in their civic and civil rights have a difficulty wanting to see whether or not these political parties are able to live up to the expectations which they actually propose.
Talking of living up to those expectations, some of his allies, his former allies, running against him. What's going on there?
Well, that's very interesting too. Some of the former allies running against him because for them they see that there's been a rupture in their alliances. The alliance being that they have been with maybe President Paul Biya for a couple of years. They looked at it more like the alliance with them was with President Paul Biya, not necessarily with his political party, which was his vehicle. Now, mind you, President Paul Biya as a statement is very astute, he's very strategic. So maybe in the rupture where maybe we may not necessarily see that in terms of the legislatives, which means that the representatives on the field, those political parties do not necessarily have weight in terms of that, in terms of what he considered as political clout. But then we are saying that in terms of these political parties that have a rupture with him, they are very, very popular in what we call the far north regions, and the extreme north region. So left for us to see during the elections, because mind you, in Cameroon, that electorate is about 40% of the elections. So, I mean, that's quite considerable. So there will be a really good challenge there with these presidential elections in the northern regions of Cameroon.
The opposition talks a lot about running behind one candidate. You touched on the issue of coalitions, but how realistic is that one candidate will be the representative of these coalitions?
Well, in my opinion, it will be quite difficult, even though there's still a possibility. And I think it's quite difficult because most opposition parties, you rally with a unique candidate prior to the start, really, of the presidential election. So I think in terms of timing, they've been a little bit late. But Cameroon is a very particular country, and this presidential election is quite particular, where there's a lot of movement in the air, where a lot of Cameroonians want some sort of change in certain things, such as the fight against corruption, such as economic change. So there's a lot of clamor for certain types of change in systemic changes as well. So we would see that once the candidacies are deposited, once they are retained, before there's a recourse for contestation by the Constitutional Council, I think that's where you might see maybe some coalitions and people might rally around, maybe say an opposition candidate that will face President Paul Biya. But as of right now, what we see is more of a challenge between, I would say myself, President Paul Biya and Bello Maigai, who has classically always been second in the opposition in terms of political representation and also at the level of the presidential. Mind you, Bello Bumba Maigari did not present himself for the past presidential elections, but here comes he has changed his strategy this time around and says he will present himself for this presidential elections.
How confident are you that ELECAM, the Electoral Commission of Cameroon, can handle and will handle the candidacy vetting process in a fair manner?
Well, Elections Cameroon has always been autonomous. It has always held consultations with all political parties, including the party in regime, and it's always given propositions. So I think they're quite fair, they're quite just, they're legitimate, and they're credible. That's why we see the rise in the number of aspirants wanting to be deposit their candidacies for the presidential elections. The bone of contention here really being the electoral code, where people feel that it should be a two-term. And they might be right, because we see the number of political parties or aspirants, as you might call it, wanting to deposit their candidacy for the elections, which means it might be a 2 rounds. But many political parties want some changes, because also in the electoral code, not all political parties in terms of structure can be at all the polling stations. So that's where you see sometimes an advantage with the CPDM party, where they have enough structure throughout the national territory to be represented throughout the polling stations. Now, with the more other political parties, they don't necessarily have a lot of structure, so they really might need to rally around. But can they come around their agendas and their political vision to rally around a particular candidate? That's where the difficulty. That's why, in my opinion, the major political parties, be it the CPDM party or the UNDP party, are the political parties in Cameroon that throughout the national territory, when it comes to polling stations, have a representation throughout the national territory.
Let's go back to the president, Paul Biya, who has brushed off concerns that were raised about his health, that he might not be healthy enough to run for presidential elections. But what would the succession process in Cameroon look like if Biya were to prove too ill to run for president?
Well, normally in Cameroon, by the constitution, if if there's a vacancy at the helm of the state, usually it's 90 days. During those 90 days, it will go back to the president of the Senate. And between those 90 days, the president of the Senate will be able to convene for presidential elections. So right now, it is true that in Cameroon, the president of the Senate also is equally at a certain age. The president of the National Assembly is also at a certain age. The president of the Republic is also at a certain age at 92. But what's particular is that they have held up to all the official obligations throughout the calendar of the year, where they have been physically there. The president of the Republic himself receives the apostolic nuncio who is represented in Cameroon. But if there's a vacancy at the helm of the state by the constitution in Cameroon, it goes to the president of the Senate to hold new elections within 90 days.
Anchang, thanks again for your time. We'll leave it there for today. We appreciate it.
No, thank you very much for Channel Africa for having me. Good morning as well to all your viewers.
Great. And Chang Paul is a Cameroonian political analyst speaking to us on the upcoming presidential elections. So 12 October, all eyes will be on Cameroon.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live 5 days a week.
zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wa zochitika pena paliponse.
Nduna wazamalonda ku Malawi aletsa kampani yopanga shuga ya Ilovo yomwe ndi nthambi ya Ilovo Sugar Group Limited kuti isiye kutumiza shuga ku maiko akunja. Malingana ndi nduna ya zamalonda Vitumbuko Mumba, izi zithandiza kuti shuga yemwe yakusowa pa msika azipezeka. Ndiye pano ndili ndi George Muhangu amene ali mu mzinda wa Blantyre mu dziko la Malawi. Chimene chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndi chani?
Chomwe chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndichonena kuti panopo ili ngati off season ya makampani a Ilovo Sugar Malawi, kunena kuti sakutha kupanga shugayi okwanira chifukwa akukolola. Ndiye akamaliza kukolola pameneno atayambeno sopano kugaya shugayi kuti azipezeka. Chinanso ndichonena kuti ma distributors amene akumakagula shuga kaya ndi ku Ilovo kaya ndi kusalima shuga akumagulisa ku maiko akunja ngati Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Mozambique.
zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Analysts have commended the Pan-African Parliament's adoption of the African Union theme for 2025. The fifth ordinary sitting of the sixth Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament is underway in Johannesburg, South Africa. It is hosted under the theme Justice for Africans and People of African Descent Through Reparations. Channel Africa's Nhlanhla Mahlangu spoke to Liesel Low-Vaudran, Senior Advisor at International Crisis Group, on the sidelines of the sitting.
I think it was important that the ambassador of Angola to the African Union was here representing the member states, the Permanent Representatives Committee, who he chairs because Angola is chairing the African Union for 2025. And I think he made a strong contribution, also linking the theme of the year, Justice for Africans Through Reparations, together with, specifically focusing on the PAP, its budget, its future, I think, because he also looked forward to what should happen next year, a new election for a new PAP bureau. There's been a lot of, let's say, up and downs with the PAP in terms of its leadership. So I think the fact that the Permanent Representatives Committee, the ambassadors in Addis, are linking more strongly with the PAP is a good thing, although it's a pity that the Commission chairperson wasn't here, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf. He was elected in February. It was a great opportunity for him also to come and speak to the PAP member states. So he wasn't here. He didn't even speak virtually, so that was a bit of a disappointment. But from the member state, from the chair of the year, Angola, I think that was important that Angola was here, and then Tandi Moraka from South Africa's Deputy Minister of International Relations was here, and she also actually spoke quite a bit about the theme of the year, which I think is quite unusual because previous themes of the African Union sometimes just go completely unnoticed, education, youth, etc. This theme really seemed to have caught on and has become something to mobilize around. Obviously, she spoke about the G20, trying to, also link Africa's asks in terms of reform of the international financial system, but also UN Security Council reform. This theme seems to have been very useful to link the idea of a greater voice for Africa in international affairs and, for example, in the G20. So altogether, it was a good opening, but I think the African Union Commission should have been more present.
Speaking of the Deputy Minister of International Relations, Tandi Morake, she also announced a visa waiver for MPs beginning in October. What did you make of that?
Yes, that was quite surprising, I thought, because that's a very controversial issue. And it seems as if, MPs have really struggled to get visas, and especially if they overstay their visas by a couple of days even, they've had huge difficulties. So she actually announced there would be a visa waiver from 1 October for PAP MPs from all African countries, which is really quite unusual. I mean, South Africa, as the host of the Pan-African Parliament, really has shown also ups and downs in terms of its support, because the host country agreement, which is very important for the PAP, is still being postponed. And we heard again yesterday about the host country agreement. I was actually surprised. I thought that all of this had been finalized, which makes it much easier for, let's say, staff of the Pan-African Parliament, but also NEPAD, APRM, all these AU organs that are based in South Africa need a host country agreement so that they, for example, are exempt from certain things, certain tax obligations. They can be considered as diplomats when they are in South Africa. So I think things perhaps are picking up again, and this is a very good way of South Africa to show, listen, we are committed also Pan-African Parliament. Because there was a time when we thought, well, there was a lot of euphoria, a lot of excitement. It is still an amazing sort of innovation compared to the Pan-African Parliament. It didn't exist before, and there was a lot of enthusiasm that the Malabo Protocol would be ratified and that the PAP would get real legislative powers. Now, that hasn't happened. We heard about that again here at the opening and so on. So the enthusiasm and the hope of the early 2000s when the PAP was created waned a bit, and maybe now, we'll see a new dynamic. Also from a new commitment from South Africans' side. But I'm a bit worried that, as I say, here we are opening. It's the only session of the PAP so far in 2025. New AU Commission, and the chairperson isn't here. The Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security did travel to Midrand to attend last week the meeting of the Peace and Security Council and the Pan-African Parliament, but now he was supposed to also speak virtually on a session on peace and security and governance, but there was a hiccup or a delay. So all in all, one has to be realistic that we're not there yet where there is a new dynamic with the PAP.
That was Liesel Vordren, Senior Advisor at International Crisis Group. She was speaking to Nhlanhla Mahlangu at the Pan-African Parliament in Midrand, Johannesburg in South Africa. 7:30 Central African Time. Let's say good morning to Jolani Tulo Mwepe with news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines. Mozambique's main opposition leader, Venancio Mondlane, says he's been charged with 5 offences, including inciting and instigating terrorism. South Africa's Umkhonto weSizwe Party has written to National Assembly Speaker Togo Didiza, calling for her to schedule a date for the party's motion of no confidence in President Cyril Ramaphosa. And finally, U.S. Congressman Ronnie Jackson says his legislation to review the bilateral relationship between America and South Africa has passed through a committee in the House of Representatives. Jackson, who is Republican, introduced the bill in April. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Now let's check in with the world of sports. Here's Figile Lingwati with the latest.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And in this hour, we begin with cricket news. Proteas captain Rassie van der Dussen says his side wasn't good enough and vowed to fix things before the final. New Zealand outplayed South Africa in every department to keep their unbeaten run alive in the Tri-Series. Their bowlers kept the Proteas to just 134 for 8 after 20 overs, with Adam Milne, Michelle Sadner and Jacob Duffy all striking at key moments. The Proteas struggled to build momentum, losing wickets regularly. Rassie van der Dussen's men could not cope with New Zealand's disciplined attack.
I think we just weren't good enough. The ball's obviously doing a bit up front there, but we knew that from the first 3 games. The challenge was to try and find a way to negate that, and we couldn't. Credit to their bowlers. They bowled pretty well, kept us under pressure, and we lost wickets throughout and really struggled to gain any sort of momentum.
Meanwhile, New Zealand captain Michelle Sadner credited his team's power play dominance and bowling discipline as key to the emphatic 7-wicket win. The match, a precursor to Saturday's final between the same two sides, served as both a trial run and a tactical reminder of New Zealand's all-round strength.
Yeah, I think the way we bowled in the power play was outstanding. The quality of South Africa at the top, and then we just were able to squeeze. Found a length, found some swing, and then, I guess, able to chip wickets away, which we've done most games.
On to football news. South Africa has been dethroned as Women's Africa Cup of Nations champions. 9-time champions Nigeria broke Banyana Banyana's hearts with a goal on 90 minutes for a 2-1 semi-final victory in Casablanca, Morocco. The Super Falcons scored via a penalty by their captain Rashidat Ajibade on the stroke of half-time to take a slender lead into the break. A penalty by Linda Motlhalo just before the hour mark drew Banyana level. But a lapse in concentration cost South Africa at the death when Michelle Alizi capitalized on a defensive error to score the winning goal for Nigeria. It was the Super Falcons' 9th victory in 12 WAFCON matches over Banyana Banyana, and they are on course for a record 10th title. South Africa, on the other hand, have been relegated to the playoff match for the bronze medal on Friday. More WAFCON news. Host Morocco booked their place in a second successive Women's Africa Cup of Nations final after edging Ghana 4-2 on penalties in a 10 semi-final clash that ended 1-1 after extra time in Rabat on Tuesday night. The Atlas Lionesses held their nerve from the sport, with goalkeeper Khadija Ermichi making a crucial save and 2 Ghanaian players missing to seal a place in Saturday's final against Nigeria. The defeat means Ghana must now battle South Africa in Friday's third-place playoff. In a fiercely contested match at Stade Moulay Abdallah, it was Ghana who struck first through Stella Nyamekwe in the 26th minute. Morocco, however, responded with increased urgency after the break. The home crowd roared them on, and their efforts were rewarded in the 55 minutes when Sakina Ozraoui Diki bundled the ball into the net from close range after sustained pressure and a deflected effort from Ebdissam Jaridi. With the deadlock unresolved after 120 minutes, penalties were required to separate the two powerhouses. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lengwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126, and we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with the community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's make our way to the world of economics as there are talks of the manufacturing of vaccines against foot and mouth disease in Indaba. Nosilpo Zuma has the details for us as she brings us those business news. Good morning.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. In your business news, SASAWA experts at the Foot and Mouth Disease Indaba in South Africa believe the country still has the expertise and capabilities to manufacture its own vaccines again to inoculate animals against the disease. The Indaba ended yesterday at Rhodoplat in Pretoria. South Africa used to produce its own vaccines until 2006, and it now relies on imports from Botswana, costing the country thousands of US dollars. Now, Acting Director at Ondersport Veterinary Institute, Dr. Baratang Lubisi, explains why the country stopped its own vaccine production.
When we stopped production in 2006, it was not because of lack of expertise, but it was due to our facilities being obsolete. The way we were producing vaccine was based on old methods. We call them the monolayer system, and today the world is producing with a suspension system, and the building, the way it was, it's old, so it's no longer meeting the good manufacturing practices. We've got both the diagnosticians and we also have the people who are trained in vaccine productions.
The beef meat producer in South Africa, Karen Beef, says it lost thousands of US dollars over the past 2 months after foot and mouth disease was detected in its facilities in May. Karen Beef produces at least 30% of the country's beef. The outbreak of foot and mouth disease in the country has led to an increase in beef prices, job cuts and decreased exports. Speaking on the sidelines of the foot and mouth disease indaba in Rhodeplat, Pretoria, senior veterinarian at Karen Beef, Dirk Verwoerd, says although they have started operations again, the past months have not been easy.
So our entire operation was stuck for 2 months, zero income, and that's really a destroying situation. The company itself lost several hundred millions of rands. The big gap in the control measures against foot and mouth disease has been the lack of vaccine. Enough vaccines, effective vaccines, regular vaccination in the source area so it doesn't escape, which it did. You have to have strategic vaccines, you have to have enough of them.
Nigeria's central bank has capped its monetary policy rate at 27.50% for the third consecutive time this year. Consumer inflation in the oil-producing West African nation fell for the third straight month in June to 22.22% year-on-year from 22.97% in May. Central Bank Governor Olayemi Gatoso acknowledged that inflation was easing. He says that the rate-setting monetary policy committee's decision was based on the need to sustain disinflation. A court in Mali has rejected an appeal by Barrick Mining to release 4 employees arrested last November. This is the latest development in a long-running standoff between the Canadian firm and the Mali government over taxes and ownership of mining operations in the country. Buntle Headbush reports.
The appeal by Barrick Mining, which has dismissed the allegations against the 4 local employees as baseless, was determined by Judge Samba Sarr to be unfounded. The company says its employees face charges including money laundering and violation of other regulations. Barrick owns 80% of the Lulukunkoto mining complex in Mali, and the government owns the rest. Operations have been suspended there since mid-January.
And finally, oil prices have urged up in Asian trade after falling for 3 consecutive sessions as a U.S. trade deal with Japan signaled progress on tariffs, though gains were kept by fading hopes for a breakthrough at an EU-China summit. Brent crude futures rose 21 U.S. cents to $68.80 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures gained 17 cents at $65.48 a barrel. Both benchmarks were down about 1% in the previous session after the EU said it was considering countermeasures against U.S. tariffs as hope faded for a deal ahead of on the 1st of August deadline. Your financial indicators: $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,530 naira, and Botswana it's 13 pula 30. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 71, and in Zambia it's 23 kwacha 08. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 579. Russia is 78 rubles 44. India is 86 rupees 14, China at 7 yuan 17, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 67. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,426 and platinum at $1,434 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $68.80 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting 13 July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Good morning starts here. Rise and shine on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Nigeria's gross domestic product, or GDP, grew by 3.13% year-on-year in real terms in the first quarter of 2025. This is according to the latest report by the National Bureau of Statistics, or NBS, on Monday. According to the Bureau, this represented an improvement over the 2.27% growth recorded in the corresponding period of 2024. The NBS, in its Q1 2025 GDP report, said the economic performance in the quarter was driven mainly by the services and industry sectors. Channel Africa's business reporter Innocent Samosa has more.
According to the Statistician General of the Federation, Adeyemi Adeniran, the figures shows an increase of 41.7% compared to the figures obtained during the 2014 GDP rebasing exercise.
The 3.13% growth in GDP for Q1 2025 signify that the Nigerian economy is progressing and we are improving in the performance at various sectors of the economy. Looking at when we compare with 2.27% that we have in Q1 of 2024, we can see that there is significant improvement in that Q1 2025. There are other sectors that contributed to this growth. We have the services sector that contributed the most growth for the Q1 2025.
Economist Professor Adiola Adenokinju shares insights on what this upward trend suggests about the broader trajectory of Nigeria's economic recovery.
Now, a number of factors may be responsible for this. One again is due to the rebase of CPI, which is a deflator. And that's the CPI, which I think also affect the GDP deflator, was reduced from 31% or over 30% in 2025 Q1.
Despite this growth, many Nigerians still feel economic pressure. How can the government ensure that GDP gains translate into real improvements in job creation, purchasing power, and living standards? Professor Adiola explains.
But the average Nigerians is still, the inflation rate is still very high. It's still over 20%. The last figure is 22.22%. That is one of the highest in the world. The exchange rate is still very high. The value is still very high, given that Nigeria is an open economy and import dependence. So to the average Nigerian, the value of his income has significantly eroded. So his ability to access food, transportation, housing, and other necessities are still very difficult. So for this higher growth to translate into better life for Nigerians, then a number of things have to be done. Government must, ensure that there's a way that food prices, can be brought down. And this, is by investing in agriculture, improving security in the northern part of the country, and they also, improving on transportation.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg.
48 minutes now past 7 Central African Time. South Africa's Gauteng Provincial Department of Health hosted a media breakfast on Tuesday to highlight progress in digitizing paper-based patient records in public hospitals and announced plans to expand the system to more healthcare facilities. The department says the digital system will improve access, security, and efficiency in managing patient information while also protecting patient privacy. The pilot rollout at Chris Hani Baragwanath Academic Hospital has been successful so far. To discuss this initiative further, we're joined now by Dr. Percy Silepe, who is Acting Chief Operating Officer of Gauteng Province's Department of Health. Dr. Silepe, how are you this Wednesday? Thank you for making time.
Good morning, Asanda and your listeners.
Please unpack this digitization of patient records. Does it mean patient paper records are being phased out?
Yeah, yes, the aim and the project aims to phase out slowly the patient records as being a paper. So this digitalization, now what we've done, we've just started with the records as far back as 2014 at Chris Hani Baragwanath, so that then the files are all now available digitally to make it easy now for our staff to access and retrieve those files quicker and easier as the patients visit the institutions. So the aim also is, yes, as you've said, is that we want now to have all our patients' records digitalized and electronically.
How do you plan to roll it out in other facilities, as you've announced, in other timeframes?
Yeah, the plan is to roll it out firstly to the institutions where we see a lot of patients. Like currently, we have rolled out to hospitals like Tambo Memorial Hospital, Sebokeng Hospital, Tembisa Hospital, which then also that project it's going to roll out up to the last phase. But coupled with that, Asanda, is that we are also now introducing the clinical version side, which then, as patients come in, which has started as well at Charlotte Maxeke and Mamelodi Hospital. So where doctors now are seeing patients firsthand using the electronic platform. So that is also just coming to match with this as we roll out slowly. So we hope that as the department, by the end of the 7th administration, we would have rolled out to all the facilities, especially the 37 hospitals and the CHCs.
We speak of it being successful at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. However, we know that with every initiative, there are hiccups. So what challenges did you encounter?
Well, the challenges were, one, the volumes that were there at Chris Hani Baragwanath. Because when we talk of 800,000 files and dating back up to 2014, it's not just, it's also individual papers that were in each file, which then those you find if a patient has been there for several years, you've got probably 50 to 70 or even 100 papers in that file that then needs to be digitalized. And some of them are very old. So they have then the team that was working, they have to make sure that they try to make those papers to be at a better quality that they can be able to then work on them. And so as well as if you understand it's a process whereby these files were stored in different areas and now the work has to happen at another area. Just that process of retrieving these files, cleaning them up, preparing them so that then they are ready to be digitalized.
Will this help with reducing patient records being lost?
That's one of the risks that we are working on, is exactly that, because therefore we were getting a lot of files getting lost, and also finding that we are running out of space for storage of these records. So in terms of digitalizing them now, it assists us as well in terms of space, and also ensuring that the patient's records are not lost. As you can remember with the recent fire at Tembisa, because of the project there that had already started, most of the files were already digitalized. So most of them, they could be retrieved because there was an electronic version that existed in the system.
What is the cost of this digitization of patient records, and does the department as it stands have a budget for it, especially if we're looking at the expansion to 37 other hospitals?
Yeah, the cost is enormous, but as the department, that's why we have spread it through the 5 years, so that then we are able to work on this and be able to do the 37 hospitals during that period. So it's not a once-off project. It's spread over years, over the MTF, so that then we are able to deal with this. But the reason we started with Para is based on volumes, and then so that when we go to the smaller hospitals, we believe that if we manage to deal with Chris Hani Baragwanath, with its complexities and the size, therefore when we go down to other institutions, therefore also the team that started at Para, they have now gained skills, they have learned, and then it's also going to be easier for them as they are dispatched to other smaller institutions in terms of size and volume.
And my next question was going to be on training and how the department is rolling that out. So I guess you touch on that one. Let's talk then in terms of the maintenance of the system and technology. What contingency plans are in place for that?
Yeah, the CIO and the team which we have in the department that is dealing with they have designed a plan in terms of how they are going to maintain this going forward. And as this unfolds, that plan will also be revealed, and it will then form part of what, as a department, we bring forth.
While the program looks promising, Dr. Selepe, there are still problems with overcrowding at hospitals. Can this technology help to tackle that issue, and does that remain still your first priority?
Yeah, remember the overcrowding is multifaceted, but yes, this is also going to shorten that problem, because part of what creates the overcrowding is the fact that patients wait long to get files. But as we come up with these electronic and digital systems, patients will no longer wait longer. And also remember, once also we've got the clinical module, which is also going to be linked to other services that we render in the facilities. That's also going to make it very easy for patients then to flow through and the overcrowding to be dealt with, although we would still be able to see larger volumes as we see currently.
Where else within the country or even SADC region has this similar system been implemented, and are there going to be collaborations in future within other healthcare sectors that serve as a template for this one?
Yeah, remember that also as we work with this, the national is also trying to digitalize so that all provinces are running on a digital platform in preparation for NHI. For instance, if you are a patient in Gauteng, then you are registered for NHI in Gauteng and you happen to be in Limpopo or Eastern Cape. They should still there be able to see your record that on what is happening to you in Gauteng of NHI. So the project is going to unfold, but also National is busy with electronic systems with other provinces. As Gauteng, we are busy with that.
Dr. Silipi, we thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much, Asanda. Have a lovely day.
You too. Dr. Percy Silipe is Acting Chief Operating Officer of Gauteng Province's Department of Health in South Africa, speaking to us on the line. Right, we enter the third and final hour of Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa. It's 8 o'clock, almost 8 o'clock, 30 seconds before 8 Central African time. And thanks for staying with us as Channel Africa. At Channel Africa 1 is our handle across our various social media platforms. We are streaming live on YouTube. That's where you can find us there on that same handle. Also on the SABC Plus app, as well as www.channelafrica.co.za. My name is Asanda Beda, riding solo on this Wednesday, the 23rd of July, but hoping that we've informed you as far as you need to be so far. But we continue in this hour talking about the Liberation Movement Summit that's being hosted by the African National Congress political party in South Africa, and the number of challenges that they're going to be touching on there, from the rise of unilateralism, protectionism, and conflicts. That story and more coming up in this hour. First, let's get our news. Here's Jwalani Tulo Mwepe, and then Figile Lingwate will follow with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Mozambique's main opposition leader Venancio Mondlane says he's been charged with 5 offences, including inciting and instigating terrorism. After last year's disputed elections, Mondlane led months of protests that were violently suppressed by the police. Tabiso Lehoko has the story.
Venancio Mondlane says he learnt of the charges during a meeting with Mozambique's Attorney General. The opposition leader said that this was a sign of the persecution he's faced for exposing fraud in last year's elections. Earlier this year, Mr. Mondlane held what appeared to be reconciliation meetings with President Daniel Chapo. The aim was to end the protests, which saw hundreds of people killed and steer Mozambique out of a deep crisis. Bringing terrorism charges against the opposition leader could reignite political instability.
U.S. Congressman Ronnie Jackson says his legislation to review the bilateral relationship between America and South Africa has passed through a committee in the House of Representatives. Jackson, who is Republican, introduced the bill in April. It is an effort to provide President Donald Trump with the tools necessary to impose sanctions on corrupt South African government officials who chose to support American adversaries like China, Russia and Iran. South Africa does not yet have a permanent envoy to the U.S. after the expulsion of Ibrahim Rasool in March this year. Shaban Bryce-Peace has the details.
Congressman Jackson posted on X that South Africa had made its choice when it abandoned America and its allies and sided with communists and terrorists. Citing the passage of his bill through House Committee, Jackson said it would allow for the full review of America's relationship with South Africa and give President Trump the tools necessary to hold what he referred to as a corrupt government accountable. The Texas congressman also said that the days of allowing their so-called allies to walk all over the United States was over. A full House vote is at least months away, with Congress in recess until September, and if later passed, it would then head to the Senate for further deliberation.
South Africa's Umkhonto weSizwe Party has written to National Assembly Speaker Togo Didiza, calling for her to schedule a date for the party's motion of no confidence in President Cyril Ramaphosa. During a press briefing in Parliament, MKP Chief Whip Colleen Makubele and party colleagues outlined their reasons for going this route.
Given the issues that the President, from the beginning of the 6th term right through to the 7th term, has been facing allegations of interference, failure of accountability, including his own palapala. Now we've got allegations of corruptions that are linked to him, and we've got failures in his administration to provide even the basic services to our people. The citizens have lost confidence in the President.
The ruling Botswana National Front, or BNF, is on a mission to foster unity with neighbouring countries. Both South Africa's Economic Freedom Fighter and the African National Congress parties were invited to attend the party's first conference in Balapia at the weekend. The BNF came to power after the 2024 elections, ousting the Botswana Democratic Party that had governed the country for more than 5 decades. President Duma Boko says he is a human rights activist and he's always aspired for a united Africa.
Economic freedom fighters, the African National Congress, all of them must step up in order to step back and reflect on the existential threat that faces their country and the rest of the region, and indeed the continent. And when they do, I hope they rise above and beyond some of these differences.
Thousands of protesters in Ukraine have taken part in some of the biggest demonstrations since Russia's full-scale invasion began 3.5 years ago. Crowds gathered in cities, including Kyiv, to denounce a new law, which they say affects the independence of anti-corruption bodies. The BBC's Grant Ferret reports.
Veto the bill was the chant by protesters, most of them young people, in Kyiv, Dnipro, Lviv and other cities. They stayed late into the night in the Ukrainian capital and said they would be back again on Wednesday. Despite the demonstrations, President Volodymyr Zelensky signed a new law passed hours earlier by Parliament. The legislation brings 2 key anti-corruption offices under the direct authority of a political appointee of Mr. Zelensky. The European Union has also voiced its unhappiness.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
It's a heartbreak for Banyana Banyana as Nigeria scored the last gasp win in the WAFCON semi-final. And the Proteas slipped to their second defeat against New Zealand in the T20 International Tri-Series in Harare. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The world is grappling with a number of challenges, from the rise of unilateralism, protectionism and conflicts. South Africa's ANC, or African National Congress political party, is set to host the Liberation Movement Summit later this week. Convened under the theme Defending the Liberation Gains, Advancing Integrated Socio-Economic Development, Strengthening Solidarity for a Better Africa, the gathering will be attended by President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, former presidents of the country, President Thabo Mbeki, and ex-Mozambican President Joaquim Chissano. The leadership from Angola's MPLA, Frelimo from Mozambique, SWAPO from Namibia, CCM from Tanzania, and ZANU-PF from Zimbabwe will take part as well. Bonolo Maribe has more.
It's been a long and hard journey for former liberation movements in Africa. They had to fight fierce battles against colonial powers from Angola, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Namibia, South Africa, and others. Tanzania became a sanctuary for liberation movements as it allowed them to train and prepare for independence, with former Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere leading the charge.
I have suggested that we need to reject the notion that the world's goals or our goals have inevitably been set by the technological and social patterns of the North.
Here in South Africa, Joe Modise played an instrumental part in the formation of Mkhotho weSizwe, the military wing of the African National Congress. Being its longest-serving commander-in-chief, Modise would also become the country's first Minister of Defense in a post-apartheid era.
Allow me to congratulate you all. This pass-out parade is one more important occasion in the history of our struggle to restore the dignity and liberty of our people. You are passing out not as the irregulars, but you are passing out as regular soldiers who are going to form the nucleus of a new army, an army in South Africa that is going to defend the democratic norms of our country.
Former Namibian President Sam Nujoma played a significant role as the leader of the National Liberation Movement in campaigning for Namibia's political independence from South African rule. The country had its first democratic elections in 1990, when Nujoma became the nation's first president.
It is a historic and indeed a day of rededication and remembrance for the heroes and heroines of the motherland.
But now, some of the former liberation movements have lost power and others have had their majorities reduced. Others, though, have produced first female leaders in their countries, such as current Namibian President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah.
The whole issue is not women, it's individuals who are given a responsibility by their nationals. Yes, we know the history, we know the culture, which is still persisting, that does not see a place for a woman to play a significant or a prominent role.
ANC's International Subcommittee Chair Nomvula Mokonyane says that the upcoming Liberation Movement Summit comes at a critical moment.
The summit taking place here of all the liberation movements is very important, strategic. The last time it took place was in 2002, not with all the presidents, but the secretaries general. This one is very exceptional. All the presidents are coming. Even the one who's not coming, she will be sending her own representative, but with a recorded message. There's a lot that has been happening in the world that impact drastically on our Pan-Africanism, on our agenda of economic development and growth amongst our different countries.
Mokonyane further says they will have frank discussions.
We have had various bilateral meetings, so we're quite certain these issues will be attended to. These matters have to be addressed. But what is at stake is our issues around our migration policies, the migration patterns, that it is predominantly those that are coming to compete for access to the scarce resources, that we definitely have to deal with their issues.
The summit is expected to take place from Friday and aims to address the current socio-economic challenges in Africa, as well as promote unity in the continent. Bonolo Maribe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The United Nations or UN Palestinian Refugee Agency said on Tuesday that its staff, as well as doctors and humanitarian workers, were fainting on duty in Gaza due to hunger and exhaustion. The UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East says it had received dozens of emergency messages from its staff describing grave conditions and exhaustion where Israel has been fighting a war against Hamas since October 2023. CC Sikhalo reports.
Director of Communications for UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, Juliet Toma, said doctors, nurses, journalists, including UNRWA staff, were hungry. She said the Commissioner General issued a statement to raise the alarm on the dire situation of caretakers and humanitarian workers in Gaza, including their staff. This is following dozens of SOS messages that they've been receiving from staffers who are living across the Gaza Strip.
Gaza has become hell on earth and no place is safe. In his statement, the Commissioner General said that no one is spared. Caretakers, including UNRWA colleagues in Gaza, are also in need of care now.
She adds that seeking food has become as deadly as the bombardments.
Many are now fainting due to hunger and exhaustion while performing their duties, reporting atrocities or alleviating some of the suffering. Meanwhile, seeking food has become as deadly as the bombardments. More than 1,000 starving people have been reported killed since the end of May. The so-called DHF distribution schemes is a sadistic death trap. Snipers open fire on crowds as if they're given a license to kill. It's a massive hunt of people in total impunity. Commissioner General adds, this cannot be our new norm. Humanitarian assistance is not the job of mercenaries. The UN and its humanitarian partners have the expertise, the experience, and available resources to provide safe, dignified, and at-scale assistance. We have proven it time and again during the last ceasefire. If I called for an end to this abomination.
The World Health Organization spokesperson Tariq Jasarevic says humanitarian operations in the enclave are being pushed into an ever-shrinking space. The world body condemned in the strongest terms the attacks on the building, which housed their staff in Gaza, and the mistreatment of those sheltering there, including the destruction of its main warehouse.
Following intensified hostilities in Deir el-Balah after the latest evacuation order issued by Israeli military, the WHO staff residence was attacked 3 times yesterday. Staff and their families, including children, were exposed to grave danger and traumatized after airstrikes caused a fire and significant damage. Israeli military entered the premises, forcing women and children to evacuate on foot toward Al-Mawasi amid active conflict. Male staff and family members were handcuffed, stripped, interrogated on the spot, and screened at gunpoint. 2 WHO staff and 2 family members were detained. 3 were later released, while 1 staff member remains in detention.
Meanwhile, WHO has demanded continuous protection of its staff and the release of the detained staff member. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
We are on OpenView's audio bouquet. Channel 628. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The United States was very vocal at the beginning of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is largely due to strained relations with South Africa at the time, that they were not really keen on participating. Where do they stand right now?
The US is planning to take over the presidency of the G20 next year, and our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so, and therefore it is quite difficult then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. From a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. What's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
16 minutes past 8 Central African time. Countries that cling to fossil fuels are not protecting their economies. They are sabotaging them. This says the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Guterres delivered a special address on climate change titled A Moment of Opportunity, Supercharging the Clean Energy Age at UN headquarters in New York earlier Tuesday. The UN chief made the case that a renewable future was fundamentally about energy and people's security and was a key peg to advancing the Sustainable Development Goals that are currently way off track in terms of implementation. Sherwin Bryce Peace has more.
Please join me in welcoming the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres.
Guterres told his audience that the world was on the cusp of a new era, one where fossil fuels were running out of road and where the sun was rising on a clean energy age.
Just follow the money. $2 trillion went into clean energy last year. That's 800 billion more than fossil fuels and up almost 70% in 10 years. A new data released today from the International Renewable Energy Agency shows that solar, not so long ago 4 times the cost of fossil fuels, is now 41% cheaper. Offshore wind, 53%. And over 90% of new renewables worldwide produced electricity for less than the cheapest new fossil fuel alternative. This is not just a shift in power. This is a shift in possibility.
His speech coinciding with the release of a special report titled Seizing the Moment of Opportunity, which highlights the benefits and actions needed to accelerate a just transition globally. Among the benefits, market economics.
In many advanced economies, emissions have peaked, but growth continues. In 2023 alone, clean energy sectors drove 10% of global GDP growth. In India, 5%. The United States, 6%. China, a leader in the energy transition, 20%. And in the European Union, nearly 33%. And clean energy sector jobs now outnumber fossil fuel jobs, employing almost 35 million people worldwide.
The Secretary-General urged action in 6 opportunity areas by using national climate plans to go all out on the energy transition, urging clarity and certainty and leadership from G20 countries, building energy systems of the 21st century with investments in the right infrastructure, meeting the world's surging energy demand sustainably, including for energy-hungry data centers on which an AI future depends, a just energy transition, arguing for a clean energy era that must deliver equity, dignity and opportunity for all, using trade and investment to support climate policy, while unleashing the full force of finance and driving investment to markets with massive potential.
Africa is home to 60% of the world's best solar resources, but it received just 2% of global clean energy investments last year. Today, developing countries pay outlandish sums for both debt and equity financing, in part because of outdated risk models, bias and broken assumptions that boost the cost of capital. Credit rating agencies and investors must modernize. We need a new approach to risk that reflects the promise of clean energy, the rising cost of climate chaos, and the danger of stranded fossil fuel assets.
Making the case for the reforms that would drive a future that is not only green, but just.
The clean energy future is no longer a promise, it's a fact. No government, no industry, no special interest can stop it. Of course, the fossil fuel lobby of some fossil fuel companies will try, and we know the lengths to which they will go. But I have never been more confident that they will fail, because we have passed the point of no return.
In a question and answer session that followed his remarks, the SG was asked why he chose to use this platform to focus on climate change rather than other crises like wars and conflicts that may feel more immediate or urgent. His response: that this was the right moment for a new offensive in bringing the urgency of climate change to the global public, as governments now take decisions that will determine their national climate plans, or NDCs, that are to be presented at the UN Climate Change Conference, or COP30, in Brazil in November this year, in an effort to ensure that those NDCs have the right measures to make COP30 the success this planet needs it to be. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
Call us on +27 63 406 9126.
I can see my home.
Contribute to the conversation.
A coalition of civil society, trade unions, research and academic organizations, as well as human rights groups in South Africa, protested outside the offices of the National Economic Development and Labour Council, or NEDLAC, on Tuesday, demanding the scrapping of proposed amendments to the country's labour laws. Protesters accused the Congress of South African Trade Unions, or COSATU, of secret meetings and selling out workers, saying the Labour Federation has sold out workers. Dimakatso Leshuru has the details.
The Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, closely affiliated with the African National Congress, received heavy criticism at the protest, with speaker after speaker saying the Labour Federation has reversed the gains workers made at the advent of democracy in South Africa. William Mokgase is the provincial chairperson of the Food and Allied Workers Union, an affiliate of SAFTU led by Zwelinze Mavavi.
Why is the government allowing this thing? Their reasoning is that this will allow big business and multinational companies to create jobs in this country. What kind of a job creation is that? By attacking the gains of post-94, because these are the gains of the new democratic dispensation, and all of a sudden those gains are now being reversed to accommodate big business at the cost of the vulnerable workers.
There are about 13 amendments to the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, 2 to the National Minimum Wage Act, and 47 amendments to the Labour Relations Act, as well as 3 changes to the Employment Equity Act that have been proposed and approved at NEDLAC. The changes to South Africa's labour laws, seen as rigid, are meant to address current challenges in job creation, the labour market, and bring the law on par with court rulings. But Mokgase says these changes have opened employees to arbitrary dismissals, among other things.
There's a procedure that needs to be followed in terms of the retrenchment. And that process, by the way, it saved a lot of jobs, even though we know there are employers that are arrogant who would simply dismiss workers by way of retrenching them without following a due process. Now, with the new proposed legislation in terms of Section 198, the employer will not have to follow the procedure that they are currently following. The employer will not have to provide a valid reason. And the employer does not have to consult by way of convening 4 meetings as required by Section 189. Those things are going to be taken away. Remember now, the procedure is going to change. It will no longer be what it is now. Secondly, the reason do not have to be justifiable reason. So the employer can simply tell you that we are retrenching because we don't need you. That is what the current legislation is proposing.
He put the blame at COSATU for agreeing with government and business to launch what he calls an assault on workers. He alleged the trade union movement has been captured by big business and is kowtowing to the leader of the Government of National Unity, the ANC.
I think the politics of the day have captured COSATU. The same COSATU is no longer what it used to be in the past. It's no longer representing the agenda of the working class. I mean, the very same COSATU leadership is the same COSATU leadership that went to the White House to speak on behalf of capital, to speak and explain the position of capital in this country, claiming to be representing the workers, which is not the case. We know that the current COSATU leadership is captured. It's very clear with this proposed legislation, with them supporting this proposed legislation, that COSATU is no longer what it used to be. They are no longer representing the agenda of the working class like they used to. In fact, the position of COSATU now in 2025 confirms why we left COSATU.
Meanwhile, COSATU's parliamentary coordinator Matthew Parks has rubbished these allegations and accused SAFTU of peddling lies.
Whilst COSATU will leave SAFTU's antics as the lonely cries of a struggling federation, desperate for media attention, fueled by its increasing relevance and obscurity, a misguided conspiratorial complex best characterized by Vladimir Lenin as left-wing infantile disorder, it is critical to assure workers that their hard-won constitutional labor rights remain intact. Whilst COSATU did not secure all we had sought in NEDLAC, we are confident that we have managed to ensure workers' rights remain secure.
Parks argues that SAFTU has not bothered to participate in the labour law reform process and is instead seeking to hog the headlines.
We can assure workers that SAFTU's claims that workers' hard-won rights guaranteed by the Constitution and set in law have not been abandoned in some secret talks in NEDLAC. SAFTU has largely been absent from NEDLAC, including its task team. It would have been a great benefit to the self-appointed guardians of the revolution of SAFTU to have attended the NEDLAC engagements to which they were consistently invited, or at least to seek clarity from the sister federations who did attend. They would have found out that their cries of conspiracies are little more than fantasies in some cases and woefully outdated information in others.
For Channel Africa News in Johannesburg, I'm Dimakatso Leshoro.
Zilipendwa na Abedi Jean de la Croix.
Tumetoka kusikiliza wimbo na huu ni utunzi wako, wewe ndio umeandika mistari na imani wewe ndio umeandika mstari. Tuanzie kwenye jina. Wimbo unaenda kwa jina gani?
Wimbo unaitwa Kanjori.
Aha, Kanjori. Kanjori maana yake nini?
Kama jinsi nilivyoimba. Nauza wazo leo, kesho na wazo wa uzuri wake, mwendo wake. Matendo yake changu chake.
Unatisha kweli kweli. Aha, Kanjori. Ni historia gani au message gani ambayo imefichama nyuma ya wimbo huu?
Yeah, Kanjori kwa ufupi ni kitu kizuri, yani kitu kizuri. Kitu kadogo yani alafu ni kazuri ambapo kanavutia kwa kila mtu. Zilipendwa kila Jumamosi kuanzia saa 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati hadi saa 1 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Still to come on Africa Rise and Shine. Before we leave, we talk about the Better Than Cash Alliance. They're hosted by the United Nations Development Programme, and that's through the Sustainable Finance Hub, supporting members in enabling digital payments. We'll find out more about that story and get analysis on what's being done in that field of things. Right now, though, let's get our news headlines with Jwalane Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, Mozambique's main opposition leader, Venancio Mondlane, says he's been charged with 5 offences, including inciting and instigating terrorism. At least 12 bodies have been recovered after a mine collapsed in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Residents say many others are feared to be missing. And finally, thousands of protesters in Ukraine have taken part in some of the biggest demonstrations since Russia's full-scale invasion began 3.5 years ago. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's find out what's happening in the world of sports. Here's Figile Lingwati with the sports news.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
We start off with football news. The Confederation of African Football CAF will host a Total Energies CAF Women's Africa Cup of Nations WAFCON technical insights discussion with the selected members of the tournament's technical study group, the TSG, in Rabat, Morocco today. The members of the TSG will provide insights into the tournament so far and take questions from the media. The experts who will be in attendance, among others, is South Africa's Shailene Boysen, the highly regarded tactician with experience coaching South Sudan's women's national team, and as a former analyst for Banyana Banyana, her deep analytical approach makes her a key member of the group. More football news. Host Morocco booked their place in the second successive Women's Africa Cup of Nations final after edging out Ghana 4-2 on penalties in a tense semi-final clash that ended 1-1 after extra time in Rabat on Tuesday night. The Atlas Lionesses held their nerve from the sport, with goalkeeper Khadija Ermrichi making a crucial save and 2 Ghanaian players missing to seal a place in the Saturday's final against Nigeria. The defeat means Ghana must now battle South Africa's Friday's third-place playoff in a fiercely contested match at Stade Moulay Abdallah. It was Ghana who struck first through Stella Nyamekwe in the 26th minute. Morocco, however, responded with increased urgency after the break. The home crowd roared them on, and their efforts were rewarded in the 55th minute when Sakina Ozraoui Diki bundled the ball into the net from close range after sustained pressure and a deflected effort from Ibtisam Jaridi. With the deadlock unresolved, after 120th minutes, penalties were required to separate the two African powerhouses. On to cricket news. Proteas captain Rassie van der Dussen says his side wasn't good enough and vowed to fix things before the final. New Zealand outplayed South Africa in every department to keep their unbeaten run alive in the tri-series. Their bowlers kept the Proteas to just 134 for 8 after 20 overs, with Adam Milne, Michelle Sedna and Jacob Duffy all striking at key moments. The Proteas struggled to build momentum, losing wickets regularly. Rassie van der Dussen's men could not cope with New Zealand's disciplined attack.
I think we just weren't good enough. The ball's obviously doing a bit up front there, but we knew that from the first 3 games. The challenge was to try and find a way to negate that, and we couldn't. Credit to their bowlers, they bowled pretty well, kept us under pressure, and we lost wickets throughout and really struggled to gain any sort of momentum.
Meanwhile, New Zealand captain Michelle Sedna credited his team's power play dominance and bowling discipline as key to the emphatic 7-wicket win. The match, a precursor to Saturday's final between the same two sides, served as both a trial run and a tactical reminder of New Zealand's all-round strength.
Yeah, I think the way we bowled in the power play was outstanding. The quality of South Africa at the top, and then we just were able to squeeze, found a length, found some swing, and then I guess able to chip wickets away, which we've done most games.
And finally, with athletics, Kenya held trials for the World Athletics Championships yesterday under the cloud of renewed doping concerns after women's marathon world record holder Ruth Chepngetich was provisionally suspended last week. According to the Athletics Integrity Unit, the AIU, Chepngetich tested positive for the banned diuretic hydrochlorothiazide on the 14th of March. Her case has also cast a shadow over Kenya's preparation for the World Championships in Tokyo from the 13th to the 25th of September. It threatens to destroy a career that has seen her win the 2019 World Marathon title in Doha and set the marathon world record in Chicago last October at 2 hours, 09 minutes and 56 seconds, making her the first woman to run the distance under 2 hours, 10 minutes. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lengwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
On Rise and Shine, we'd love to hear your views or questions. You can get in touch with us on our social media platforms at Channel Africa 1 is our handle. That is across X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and LinkedIn, as well as Facebook. And now let's get the latest in the world of business news as we say good morning to Nosipho Zuma.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. In your business news this hour, experts at the Foot and Mouth Disease Indaba in South Africa believe the country still has the expertise and capabilities to manufacture its own vaccines again to inoculate animals against the disease. The Indaba ended yesterday at Roodeplaat in Pretoria. South Africa used to produce its own vaccines until 2006, and it now relies on imports from Botswana, costing the country thousands of US dollars. Acting Director at the Ondersport Veterinary Institute, Dr. Baratang Lubisi, explains why the country stopped its own vaccine production.
When we stopped production in 2006, it was not because of lack of expertise, but it was due to our facilities being obsolete. The way we were producing vaccine was based on old methods. We call them the monolayer system, and today the world is producing with a suspension system, and the building, the way it was, it's old, so it's no longer meeting the good manufacturing practices. We've got both the diagnosticians and we also have the people who are trained in vaccine productions.
The beef meat producer in South Africa, Karen Beef, says it lost thousands of US dollars over the past 2 months after foot and mouth disease was detected in its facilities in May. Karen Beef produces at least 30% of the country's beef. The outbreak of foot and mouth disease in the country has led to an increase in beef prices, job cuts and decreased exports. Speaking on the sidelines of the foot and mouth disease in Daba in Roodeplaat, Pretoria, senior veterinarian at Karen Beef, Dirk Verwoerd, says although they have started operations again, the past months have not been easy.
So our entire operation was stuck for 2 months, zero income, and that's really a destroying situation. The company itself lost several hundred millions of rands. The big gap in the control measures against foot and mouth disease has been the lack of vaccine. Enough vaccines, effective vaccines, regular vaccination in the source area so it doesn't escape, which it did. You have to have strategic vaccines, you have to have enough of them.
Nigeria's central bank has kept its monetary policy rate at 27.50% for the third consecutive time this year. Consumer inflation in the oil-producing West African nation fell for the third straight month in June to 22.22% year-on-year from 22.97% in May. Central Bank Governor Olayemi Cardoso acknowledged that inflation was easing. He says the rate-setting monetary policy committee's decision was based on the need to sustain disinflation. A court in Mali has rejected an appeal by Barrick Mining to release 4 employees arrested last November. Now, this is the latest development in a long-running standoff between the Canadian firm and the Mali government over taxes and ownership of mining operations in the country. Bundle Hetbush reports.
The appeal by Barrick Mining, which has dismissed the allegations against the 4 local employees as baseless, was determined by Judge Samba Sarr to be unfounded. The company says its employees face charges including money laundering and violation of other regulations. Barrick owns 80% of the Lulugunkoto mining complex in Mali, and the government owns the rest. Operations have been suspended there since mid-January.
And finally, oil prices have edged up in Asian trade after falling for 3 consecutive sessions as a U.S. trade deal with Japan signaled progress on tariffs, though gains were capped by fading hopes for a breakthrough at an EU-China summit. Brent crude futures rose 21 U.S. cents to $68.80 a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures gained 17 cents at $65.48 per barrel. Both benchmarks were down about 1% in the previous session after the EU said it was considering countermeasures against U.S. tariffs as hope faded for a deal ahead of the 1st of August deadline. Your financial indicators: $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,530 naira, and Botswana is 13.30. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shillings 71, and in Zambia it's 23.08. The BRICS countries: $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 579. Russia is 78 rubles 44. India it's 86 rupees 14. China it's 7 yuan 17. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 67. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,426 and platinum at $1,434 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $68.80 a barrel. Now, for any business news stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nusipho Soma.
business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. We are on Open View's audio bouquet. Channel 628.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the country's national rugby team, the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting 13 July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere. No subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Good morning starts here. Rise and shine. The African perspective.
A debate on the state of financing in the African Union has taken place at the 5th ordinary sitting of the 6th Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament, or PAP, in Johannesburg, South Africa. The session's debates reflected a shared commitment to strengthening the PAP's financial and oversight capacities. The AU's financial budget is made up of contributions from member states and funding from international partners and external donors. Tlantla Mahlangu reports.
The African Union depends on external donors for about 70% of its funding. George Orina, chairperson of the Subcommittee on General Supervision and Coordination on Budgetary, Financial and Administrative Matters, presented a crucial report on the state of financing of the Union, addressing the financial strategies and challenges for sustainable Union growth. The session heard that the 2025 budget for the AU, adopted during the 45th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council held in Accra, Ghana in July 2024, was just over $608 million. Orina says the budget is not enough.
A clear indicator of the state of affairs is the fact that the AU budget for 2026 financial year is approximately 10% of the budget that was approved for the year 2020. Excellencies, members of this House, I will repeat that the budget of the AU for 2026 is 10% lower than the budget that was approved in 2020. Member states have directly been assessed only 220 million for 2026. The assessment in 2020 was 220 million. If we take all factors into consideration, including inflation alone, it will be self-evident that we are still dealing with an austerity budget.
The Pan-African Parliament relies on the AU and external donors for funding. Tony Sibanze from Eswatini urged the President of the Parliament, Chief Fortune Charumbira, and PEP members to actively advocate for stronger financial commitments from national parliaments.
As much as we appreciate the 650 because it enabled us to have this session, we are still sitting with a budget gap, Your Excellency. So please, I stand to request you, because you've demonstrated that you really want to support this Pan-African Parliament, that when we file our supplementary budget, ordinary supplementary budget, which is coming in the next few months, please lobby on our behalf, your fellow colleagues, to assist the Pan-African Parliament to get this adequate funding so that our missions and the Bureau can be able to do its function. But we have a concern, mainly in the Finance Committee, that the AU budget calendar does not coincide well with the Pan-African Parliament calendar for statutory meetings. Remember that the budget starts with the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee discusses with the Bureau, and it is tabled at the plenary. So if there is no plenary, it will be a challenge for it to be sent to the African Union because it must be approved by the plenary. So you find that that calendar does not coincide, and most of the time we find that we miss out because of that. If you can maybe assist us to clarify how best we can align that.
Kenyan parliamentarian Denson Mungatana says PEP should be independent and adequately resourced to fulfill its mandate, advocating for a buffer fund to assist financially constrained countries in meeting their commitments.
Given the circumstances that are difficult within the main budget of AU, we have constantly raised the issue that we want to go out and look for money to directly fund our activities as Pan-African Parliament. And then we are informed that even if we raise money, first of all, it is not encouraged. But even if we raise the money cannot be handled by the Pan-African Parliament itself. The money must be taken to AU headquarters. Why is this the case? If we take the chance and the effort to go and look for money, why can't this parliament be allowed to function independently so that we can support our programs without having to go to the African Union headquarters?
The debate highlighted the importance of independence and transparency. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Ntlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
The Better Than Cash Alliance, hosted by the United Nations Development Programme, or UNDP, through its Sustainable Finance Hub, supported its members in enabling digital payments for more than 100 million people in 2024. This is contained in the 2024 annual report, which highlights the progress of nearly 20 member countries and partners, including 30 major initiatives and 40 policy reforms. This milestone marks major progress in advancing financial inclusion, especially for women, with 82% of advisory services supporting gender-intentional initiatives. The swift finalization of the African Continental Free Trade Area, or the AfCFTA, the digital trade protocol annexes of that, just 6 months after their adoption by the African Union, marks a major step forward. For more on this, we're joined by Lucy Nshuti Mbabazi, who is Managing Director at Better Than Cash Alliance, to discuss. Lucy, thank you for joining us. How are you on this Wednesday?
I am doing very well. I hope you can hear me.
Yes,
Good morning, and thank
We can hear you. Thank you very much. Please tell us more about this report and the improvements in some of the countries where you operate.
Thank you so much. Our annual report really highlights what our members are doing. As an alliance of 80 members with governments around the world in Latin America and the Caribbean, Asia Pacific, and here in Africa, we are proud of the things that they're doing. Everything we do is co-created with them based on their priorities of where they want to take their countries, especially in ensuring that every one of their citizens is financially included. We are proud of the work that the continent has done through the AfCFTA. Thanks to the champion in His Excellency Wamkele Mene. We are proud to see the work that Ethiopia as well is doing to ensure and entrench digital financial services to power the country's economic transformation, led by the governor of the central bank and the prime minister himself, who is a very good champion. What we love about this work is that intentionality of ensuring that everyone can access equitably digital financial services to empower themselves to the life that they want to lead, or the business that they want to, take as far as they need to go. It is in the success of the citizens and the businesses that governments are able to propel economic development, and it's great to be part of this work.
To what would you attribute these milestones, and what does it mean in terms of the progress in the absorption of digitalization?
This progress is truly driven by the political will of the government leaders or the partners that we work with. Their belief in the power of digital, they're taking action to make it happen and mobilizing everyone to join in making this happen. That intentionality comes through payment strategies or a protocol on digital trade that is rooted in inclusion, that wants to see people and businesses prosper. I think that we cannot achieve what we achieve because our members, without our members doing the work and making the investment. We play a small part, and now as we sit in UNDP, we're able to reach even more countries, reach more communities through this work, but all of it really starts with that political will and the investment to make it happen. We obviously cannot do this without our funders that believe in this work and continue to invest in our expertise to reach more people.
82% of advisory services support gender-intentional initiatives. What does the growth in access mean, especially in terms of the financial inclusion of women and the significance of digital payments for these economies?
Women are the heartbeat of many economies because they own the most businesses, or they lead and work in most MSMEs. They are also the heartbeat of the home. And so their economic participation already is visible in the homes. And being able to invest in every potential they have is to the success of the country, to the success of the family, and to the success of the business. Our intentionality is driven especially because all the statistics that you see, women financial inclusion lags men. Women ownership of account lags men. Women ownership of registration, businesses that are registered is behind men. So our intentionality is to really stay the course and remind our members and keep them consistently delivering on their promise to ensure that every woman, every girl, every marginalized group is equally served so that they can propel them to where they want to see themselves. So that intentionality is critical for us. That's why we have the UN Principles for Responsible Digital Payments. And number 3 of those principles is prioritizing women. We can't do that when we don't include them. We can't do that when we don't design solutions that really meet their needs. So that intentionality we bring to our work, and we ensure that every member, every partner, every champion is putting women at the center so that we can close any financial gaps that are there. That all these predictions that if we move at the pace, and the World Economic Forum report just came out and Findex just came out, where they show these gaps narrowing, but that it will still take 100 years to drive equality. So when we do the work now to ensure women are financially included, we ensure that those gaps close very quickly, and we no longer have to keep reminding people that this is fundamental. And we have seen proven time and time again that when women are served, they do even better in paying back their loans, they do better in driving business growth. And so we just need to keep that work going, and I hope you can join us in continuing to double click and ensuring that everyone is driving women financial inclusion.
As you talk of projections in terms of how many years it will take for more progress to be achieved, 1/3 of the world's population and workers will be African by the year 2075, according to the African Continental Free Trade Area. Is the importance of training, especially for the youth and women, being prioritized on national and regional efforts currently? And if not, what needs to be given the most attention there?
We are seeing more prioritization on the continent for women and youth. And this has started right at the AU Assembly by even having the very first protocol for women and youth in trade. The work of the Continental Free Trade Area Protocol on Digital Trade means that countries have committed to doing this work. The goal now is to make those commitments a reality, and doing so quickly at a national and regional level. This is fundamental in this is fundamental because we need to work with government, private sector, academia, civil society to implement those commitments and aspirations of Agenda 2063 that can only really be accelerated through the AFCFTA. It will be a loss for us if we don't build these foundations now, if we don't educate children while they're in school about the power of the continental free trade area, the power of digital in their prosperity, and ensure that we ingrain in them that self-reliance and that dignity that they must give themselves to bring the value and harness the value that we have right here in Africa that can take us anywhere we want to go. Right. So that investment now, and it's great to see the AFCFTA Secretary General doing this very well, and the new administration in the AU chair and deputy chairperson really prioritizing these things. Now, the work, of course, is for the people to do the work, the private sector to do the work.
Lucy, thank you so much. We're going to have to leave it there. We are completely out of time. We appreciate you making time to chat to us and give us these valuable insights again.
Thank you for having us.
Lucy Nchuzi Mbabazi is Managing Director at Better Than Cash Alliance, a United Nations Development Program initiative. All right, after Rise, we have On the Move coming up on Channel Africa. That's with Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa Tau. Palesa joining us now to give us a sneak peek into what to expect on this 23rd of July. Good morning.
Good morning, Asanda. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Today on the Move, experts say that in a day, we make around 33,000 decisions. And I mean, from big decisions to small decisions, what
That's
to
a lot
wear,
in a day.
And so essentially all the time we're actually making a variety of decisions. But some people who make more decisions than others could have what they call decision fatigue. And this is where, you end up sort of closing up because of you're constantly making all these decisions. And I think it could be worse for moms who are also deciding what to eat. Hey, what should I take? What should I put in the kids' lunchbox? This and that and the other. So we're going to be speaking about the science of decision fatigue and how small changes in, creating routines and your timing in a day could actually help you bring back your energy and refocus.
So routine actually shifts you away from making a decision.
Yes,
just
because you've already
flow.
planned ahead.
Yeah.
You don't have to make those decisions every day.
Okay, interesting one. I think moms make 50,000 decisions.
Exactly, I think so too. Well, that's what we have today on the Move, and I'm sure there's going to be more to speak about as well.
Great. And that's how we come to the end of this Wednesday's edition of Africa Rise and Shine. From me, Asanda Beda, and the team, it's goodbye. Stay tuned for On the Move. I'll be back with you, with Peter, tomorrow 6 till 9. Let's say good morning again to Jolani Tulongwepe with the news update.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Top stories. Asawa, Mozambique's main opposition leader, charged with inciting and instigating terrorism and warning that mass starvation is spreading across the Gaza Strip. Good morning. Mozambique's main opposition leader, Venancio Mondlane, says he's been charged with 5 offences, including inciting and instigating terrorism. After last year's disputed elections, Mondlane led months of protests that were violently suppressed by the police. Tabiso Lehoko has more.
Venancio Mondlane says he learned of the charges during a meeting with Mozambique's Attorney General. The opposition leader said that this was a sign of the persecution he's faced for exposing fraud in last year's elections. Earlier this year, Mr. Mondlane held what appeared to be reconciliation meetings with President Daniel Chapo. The aim was to end the protests, which saw hundreds of people killed and steer Mozambique out of a deep crisis. Bringing terrorism charges against the opposition leader could reignite political instability.
At least 12 bodies have been recovered after a mine collapsed in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Residents say many others are feared to be missing. The BBC's Barbara Plett-Asher reports.
Reports said a series of cascading landslides buried up to 15 mining shafts without warning. It's not clear why.
This happened at an artisanal mining site north of the city of Bukavu in the eastern province of South Kivu. A local resident said it was likely impossible to know how many people were working there when the shafts collapsed because of the informal nature of the site. The incident took place in an area controlled by M23 rebels who recently seized mineral-rich territory from Congolese forces.
The U.S. Congressman Ronnie Jackson says his legislation to review the bilateral relationship between the America and South Africa has passed through a committee in the House of Representatives. Jackson, who is Republican, introduced the bill in April. It is an effort to provide President Donald Trump with the tools necessary to impose sanctions on corrupt South African government officials who chose to support American adversaries like China, Russia and Iran. South Africa does not yet have a permanent envoy to the U.S. after the expulsion of Ibrahim Rasool in March this year. Shaban Bryce Pease reports.
Congressman Jackson posted on X that South Africa had made its choice when it abandoned America and its allies and sided with communists and terrorists. Citing the passage of his bill through House Committee, Jackson said it would allow for the full review of America's relationship with South Africa and give President Trump the tools necessary to hold what he referred to as a corrupt government accountable. The Texas congressman also said that the days of allowing their so-called allies to walk all over the United States was over. A full House vote is at least months away, with Congress in recess until September, and if later passed, it would then head to the Senate for further deliberation.
Portugal has joined other Western countries in expressing a positive view of Morocco's autonomy proposal for the disputed Western Sahara region. This after the Portuguese Foreign Minister Paulo Rangel said on the plan had serious and credible basis. The dispute dating back to 1975 pits Morocco, which claims sovereignty over Western Sahara, against the Algeria-backed Polisario Front, which seeks an independent state there. Rangel showed support for the autonomy proposal first presented by the Moroccan King Mohammed to the United Nations in 2007. The plan would establish a local legislative, executive and judicial authority for Western Sahara, elected by its residents, while Rabat would retain control over defence, foreign affairs and religion. And finally, more than 108 agencies have issued a joint statement warning that mass starvation is spreading across the Gaza Strip. Despite Israeli denials, the organizations say even their own workers are suffering acutely from shortages. The BBC's David Bamford has the story.
The signatories include Doctors Without Borders, Save the Children and Oxfam. They say their staff have no choice but to join Gazans in the same dangerous food lines, risking being shot just to feed their families. The agencies are demanding the free flow of aid through UN-led mechanisms. Israel acknowledges there's been a significant drop in the amount of aid reaching Palestinians, but it denies there's famine. A report by the Hamas-run health ministry that over 30 people have died of malnutrition in the past 3 days is dismissed by Israel as propaganda.
Recapping the top story this hour, Mozambique's main opposition leader, Venancio Mondlane, has been charged with 5 offences, including inciting and instigating terrorism. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulongwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.